I would ask Callie to note roll call. The only announcement I have for this meeting is that you just heard Tashidra is in Oconomowoc and taking care of her brother who had surgery. So thank you for doing that. And she will be on Zoom, and probably for connectivity purposes, we won't see a live picture. Any other announcements, Bill or anyone else? Okay, we will move forward then. And I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Jan, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Any comments, questions, or edits? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move into the item for discussion, which is presentation and discussion regarding housing strategies in the Village of DeForest. Let me open this by saying that the meeting on the 26th, the forum, was a great opportunity to get input from the community and to discuss some of these issues. I had I enjoyed the part I was there for. It was a lot of work, and so I want to thank staff for taking the time to put that together. Sharon was there as well, and she's also on our Zoom. And I think will be available for certain questions and or comments at some point. So I will turn it over to Alex, who's also done a lot of work to put this report together. That was no small feat from all of the information that came in from that session.
Thank you. Yeah, so I sent out, apologize for not getting this into packets. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that we got as much as we could from the housing workshop on Thursday incorporated into the report. That was emailed to you all. I do have the fancy Stacy Harmon version here too that I'll end up getting out there. So that's all prettied up. Sharon is on Zoom, so I'll kick it over to her a little bit here in a few minutes to talk about the workshop on Thursday and how that all went. But this has obviously been a long time coming. I think we started these housing conversations, I want to say almost a year ago, maybe more than a year ago. Obviously, we wanted to do our due diligence in designing an approach that would bring in public input, get some of the focus groups, kind of dial into the needs of our community a little bit more from the public side of things. So the document that I sent you is intended to do two things. The first is to create an implementation strategy to build off the housing chapter in the comprehensive plan, which we adopted in spring of 2023. And then the second thing is to bring the Dane County Regional Housing Strategies action items to a more local level with a set of short-term actions that fit DeForest specifically. So it's sort of twofold there. The report itself, which is up here on screen, I'll zoom in because that's kind of tiny, outlines how we did that. The process that we went through from the focus groups to the housing survey, which is included as an appendix to the report, to the workshop that we had last week. So we're planning to put materials associated with all of these activities up on Engage DeForest. There is a page that we used for the event itself. So we'll house this report as well as some of the other stuff. The housing survey will be on there. That shorter report that you all saw a couple months back will be on there. So that everybody can see that. That shorter report out from the focus groups, we did actually incorporate into this longer document here. So you'll see some of that analysis in here. We did combine that with some of the analysis from the housing survey as well, just to make that a little bit more robust. So the workshop that we held last week is also included. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Sharon to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Alex. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, you have to speak loudly, but we can hear you.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to join by Zoom. That's super convenient. I'm going to speak specifically about the Housing Strategies Workshop. And I'll start by just thanking your staff. You've got an amazing staff with Alex, Brandy, and Rachel. They were very fun to work with, very creative, and extremely well prepared for everything. So we worked together on both the focus groups and on the workshop. And all throughout, it was a pleasure to work with them. Alex mentioned the focus groups. We talked about that at a previous meeting of the trustees. And a colleague from Extension also helped with putting together that survey. And so between the focus groups and the survey, we had a lot of information about how individuals and businesses perceive housing availability and affordability. The survey gave us a large scale, like a 30,000 foot view of the issue. The focus groups dived in and gave us specific information from audiences that have a stake in what's happening with housing. What we were trying to do with the community-wide workshop is there were two focus things that happened there. The first is education, that by calling people together, it highlights that the village is thinking a lot about housing availability and affordability and is planning to move forward. And it provided information about the Dane County Regional Strategy, about the issue that regional shortage of housing is not an issue just in one village or one city. It's very much a regional issue. And the growth of Dane County makes it a high priority to address that. So that information exchange got everybody on the same page, ready for the discussion. But really, the main reason for having the community workshop is to hear the voices of residents and to identify what do residents think are appropriate strategies, what fits with the character of the village, and what might be strategies that won't work. But primarily, what do people think about these potential ways to address the shortage of affordable housing? And that, I think, was accomplished. What we did was had the speakers first. Olivia Perry from the County of Dane gave a presentation on the regional plan, and then Tom Landgraf from the business school talked about various issues in housing development. From there, we went out to breakout table discussions, and I counted about 30 people there. We had 26 on the sign up. That's a nice participation level for the space that we had. And those folks broke up into 3 different discussion tables. The 3 were focused on strategies that Alex and his team had pulled out from the comprehensive plan, from the regional housing strategy, and from the focus group conversations. So they were built off of the previous information gathering that we had done. So what I'm going to do is just give a very quick summary of what happened in each of those breakout table discussions. And Alex will go into more detail about the specific strategies after I talk about what we heard. So the table on funding strategies, they talked about several of the strategies that were presented. Unfortunately, these are kind of complicated, and so the group ran out of time and was not able to get to all of them. But the ones that seemed to garner the most support were providing loan funds for accessible home renovations. And I'll note that this is specifically addressing senior housing. Seniors have specific needs, and many homes where seniors are living might not be safe or suitable for their needs as they're aging. So loans for accessibility was highly regarded as a good strategy. Provision of funding for more housing using TIF funding is another option that can really address the shortage of housing. And that one, there were mixed views. It was popular with mixed reviews because people wanted to make sure that it did not increase tax burden. And so that is something for the planners to address, is how do you do that and make sure that people can still afford to live in their home and pay taxes. Another strategy was public purchase of land for housing. And this is a new one for many people, so there were a lot of questions and also some concerns about how does that play out if a development, if land is purchased for a development and that's not successful. But these are all strategies that can reduce the cost of building. And so the village can determine what kind of housing is most in need and then prioritize that kind of housing. The second table was on regulatory strategies. And this is an area where municipalities actually have some control. They can make tweaks in codes and zoning in order to lower the barriers to housing development. And this group talked about a number of strategies. They zipped through 6 strategies, and the ones that garnered the most support were developing a traditional neighborhood development zoning district. And that would be one where you can have a diverse array of housing styles and would range from single-family homes to duplexes to multifamily housing, but it would keep the character of the community. You'd still have the feel of a village, even with more density. The second regulatory strategy was really a package of strategies, and that's reducing some of the requirements for developers. That this we heard a lot of in the focus group with the developers, that every additional requirement adds time to their process and cost to the development. So reducing the amount of parking that's necessary, taking away the requirement for first floor commercial is something that would decrease the cost for the developers. Reducing setback requirements and reducing lot sizes. Those 4 requirements could make it easier for the developer to lower their own costs. I wasn't in this group, but apparently there's a pretty vibrant discussion about 4-story developments, multifamily housing that goes up a bit higher. And folks had some concerns about that. So what that indicates is merely if there is to be multifamily housing developed that goes up to 4 stories, there would need to be community education and a process of just talking about it in order to alleviate concerns and to address those concerns. And the third table really got into communication strategies. It was about partnerships. That table found anything that could increase information sharing, communication, and awareness among residents was going to be helpful. Tom Landgraf talked a lot about when a community objects to a housing development, that can be a real thorn in the side of developers. It increases the time to development and it increases costs all around. So the more the community is aware of what the village is planning on doing, the more the community is engaged, the more opportunities to hear from them and hopefully to alleviate concerns. Some of the specific strategies suggested in this group was to provide outreach and education for home buyers so that they understand requirements, mortgage requirements, payments, assistance programs, to educate about housing financial assistance that is already available, and specifically energy efficiency upgrade programs. There are a lot of IRA-funded programs in the works right now, and getting that information out to homeowners can really help decrease the cost burden of housing by decreasing energy bills. A second strategy is working with the existing community-based organizations to disseminate the information about these assistance programs. So working with the library, the senior center, various community organizations. maybe in the production of videos or hosting of community events so that people can learn about assistance that's available. A third strategy that I was surprised this garnered a lot of support. It's something that not many people know about, is the establishment of a housing task force made up of residents, possibly in combination with staff people. And a housing task force would be monitoring progress on the implementation of the plan and also informing the community about what's going on and what the village is doing. So it's a back and forth community engagement strategy that just increases visibility, the transparency of the process. Another partnership strategy was working with nonprofits that are specifically in the business of providing housing for income restricted families and also households with special needs. And there are a number of those organizations in Dane County, and the recommendation was that the village pursue discussions with these, including Habitat for Humanity, but other organizations as well, are serving as housing developers in a nonprofit arena. And so they have access to specific funds and opportunities within that, within the populations they serve. So with that, that's the summary of the event. I will note it was really important that the event was welcoming. There was food there, there were beverages, sweets at the table, and I sensed from the participants a real enjoyment as well as appreciation for the opportunity to learn and to have these conversations and to engage. And with that, I'm going to have Alex continue on with the strategies that were proposed.
Thank you, Sharon.
I guess I will pause real fast and see, are there any questions about the workshop itself or for the trustees? I know there were, I think, 3 or 4 who were in attendance. Is there anything that you all would like to add from that event before we continue forward? No.
One thing I noted, I guess, in the beginning, there were a couple of guys who were a little bit angry. But they were kind of, it was kind of tamped down and they became more productive. I heard as the night went on. I apologize. I had my 2 grandchildren, great grandchildren, so we needed to leave. But I think that was important because you can't have a lot of communication when people are like not listening. So I was pleased to see that, and I hope we can continue that kind of back and forth interaction.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. For what it's worth, both of the individuals who had some more public comments during the presentations were at my little focus table there, and we had a really a great conversation. So the only thing that I'll add from this, and it's not necessarily pertaining to the workshop itself, but I do want to mention this because I told him I would mention this. Chief Lefebvre came up to us before the event and was very right in pointing this out, that the housing survey that went out included a lot of preference questions about, why do you choose the community that you live in, from parks, from all that stuff. And in none of those survey questions was there anything about what is the importance of fire, EMS, or PD, any of that stuff. So I just want to acknowledge that is definitely something that I think was an oversight on my part personally, and would be something that I think we should probably definitely start to pay a little bit more attention to in these types of activities. So just wanted to share that piece. And then I guess, yes.
Not all that important, but when we were talking about the 4-story structures, the concern was public safety. And I have verified that the fire department's ladder truck can go up about 80 feet, and they figure 10 feet a story. So we're good with 4.
I was there. Yeah, I was there. I thought it was a great attendance. I thought it was a great presentation. The only thing that I was a little cautious about was when you're talking about housing and building and development, and the crowd is hard to read. The presentation was a little, I wish we would have vetted it a little bit. There was some information that was shared that really didn't pertain to, kind of like the DeForest mix, that one example of a development that was built that had increased crime, and it was a development that actually went in the wrong direction. And I think that could have had a very negative outcome with the positive, or just the work that we were trying to do, or the information that we were gathering. And I kind of wish we could have had that discussion with our presenter ahead of time, just to see what the purpose of that was, especially with just a short time frame and not really being able to go into details of what that particular development was all about, and where it was located, and how that location and how it really matches with the feel of our community, and in the direction that we're taking our community. But I do think that the attendance and the mix of the individuals that we had, and the opportunity for questions and answers, and just the atmosphere was perfect, and bringing individuals together to really gather as many different perspectives as we possibly could was perfect. And I was grateful that we had that opportunity in our community to do that.
Thank you, Tashidra. And I would echo what Tashidra just said, because I think there are things that happen in big cities or in parts of Dane County that aren't quite the issue out here. And with the right prevention and development, we can probably be successful. But I don't want to get caught up in the public affairs of what's been in the newspaper and what's happened in Madison.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you both saying that, because I was not anticipating that Tom would go that direction when I saw his slides, and I think it was well intentioned, but may have just missed the mark a little bit. So appreciate that feedback. I will then go ahead and move us on into the meat of this report, which is the actual recommendations. So there were three broad categories, which we kind of touched on here: funding, regulations, and partnerships. Again, just to recap, the recommendations in this report build off of the Regional Housing Strategy, or RHS, the technical expertise of our staff, and obviously the conversations that we've been having at a board level over the last year or so, the results of the housing survey, and then the focus groups as well. The workshop then, as Sharon kind of mentioned, provided additional input into these. Each of the recommendations, if you look through the report, has a little snippet where there's a relation to findings section, trying to show how this ties to the actual recommendation, or excuse me, actual findings from both the surveys and some of these other activities as well. Before going too much further detail, I guess, so the next steps for these, we do intend, because the regulatory category, there's a lot of zoning recommendations. We do intend to present this at the planning and zoning meeting in October to get some input from them as well. Obviously, the zoning code stuff pertains more towards their activities, although the village board will provide direction to that as well. The funding and partnerships are likely better suited for you all. So I'd be seeking your direction on that. So we can walk through these one by one if you'd like, or I'd be happy to take any questions or address anything specifically. However you want to do it, I guess, is fine by me. The thing that I want to stress about these is that each of these is sort of a jumping off point for then us to have a more detailed conversation and ultimately actually do something about housing. So which would you prefer? Would you, we have time and I do like to talk, so we can go through the whole thing.
We know that, Alex, and we appreciate that. Let me ask a question. Is it possible to summarize some of the data or the impression that people had at the meeting for what housing needs are in DeForest? Was there any discussion about that, or did we jump right to strategies to deal with lack of housing?
So one of the original questions, and it's included as Appendix B in the report, was just a broad question. Let me scroll through the entire survey about, what are your thoughts about the priorities for housing in DeForest? Just left it very broad like that. So we could certainly start there. I also want to make clear, we had 30 people at this. The survey hit 456 people across both communities, DeForest and Windsor. The challenge in any of these types of activities is trying to figure out how you're going to reach a community of 12,000 people, right? And get that. So take these with a grain of salt, and that this is a very focused segment of individuals. But you can kind of see here some of the comments. Workforce housing, people who work in the village should be able to live here. Affordable entry-level homes, including those for single people. And I will say that a lot of what we heard, I can speak for this personally at my table, because I know that a lot of these comments came from the folks that I sat with. A lot of what we heard in this first question also echoed, and Brandy and Sharon can probably attest to this too, what we heard in the focus groups. So I think ultimately having sort of this triangulation between the survey, the workshop, and the focus groups kind of corroborated or reinforced, validated some of these concerns, I guess. Housing options for various family sizes. Families was a big one. We need housing that matches who works here. Again, workforce was definitely a theme that came through. Accessibility was a big one, particularly for seniors. That was both in the workshop, and I think you see that across all three. Managing growth was a big point too. I think one individual indicated they wanted to see us maintain a 3% population growth, not to overburden the schools. There it is. Balancing housing with other priorities, fire, EMS, PD, property taxes, keeping a village feel, affordable homes for those who want to downsize. I think this document does a good job of capturing a lot of the sentiment out there. Not a fan of giving tax dollars to developers or builders. Where that comment came from, I was very surprised, because the individual who made that comment also said they would wholeheartedly support the village being the developer of housing. And I don't know. Okay, there we go. Another big one this was at my table too. We had somebody who said more than half of their income goes to gross rent right now. And then there was broad support for use of TIF for housing. I even heard somebody say they would prefer to use TIF for housing as opposed to commercial. But I think across the board in the TIF discussion, they also wanted to make sure that we had control mechanisms in place and some criteria with which to evaluate how we're giving those out or potentially incentivizing deals.
Your comment where the guy seemed to, or whoever made that comment was in conflict with himself, supports Rebecca's position. And then I'll let you ask the question, but she's been saying for a while, we need to get more information out on how TIFs work and how, who's really paying for that and what kind of incentives could it provide, but it supports that. Go ahead.
Yeah, going towards that TIF and housing, and the 3%, population growth for the schools and stuff. One of the concerns I've had, and especially with the proposed school referendum that they've put up, we've had TIF going on, and some of it, not much, but some of it has gone towards some housing. Mixed use more. I'm a little concerned with the feedback that we get from the schools, because we've got our stuff that we do, then you've got the next door neighbor that's part of the school district. They're doing their stuff with their TIF. I don't even know if do they have one TIF district? Yeah, Windsor. Do they even have a TIF? Okay. So, they've got TIF going on too, but I'm just concerned that we're really paying attention to how that TIF might affect the funding for the school. Because I don't want the people of the village to end up going, or the entire school district for that matter, going for another big referendum like this. Because if we're part of the problem, does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
So I really want to make sure that when we're looking at that related to housing, because that's my biggest issue with TIF and housing, is how does it affect the schools? And there's been times where we've had some discussions where it sounded like it was not going to be a negative impact, but then we have this referendum. So I'm getting mixed signals, and I think the public is getting mixed signals too on TIF and how it might affect school funding. So
Yeah, I think it's nuanced, and that's hard to be easily digestible, right? Especially from a communication standpoint. And so in some of the more recent housing developments where TIF has been a conversation around them, we've looped in the school district to those discussions too, just to make sure that we are, being responsive to how it impacts them as well. But it could be, I think in all of this, especially as it relates to TIF, but even across the board with all of this, and the education piece is important, right? So being able to help bridge the gap in understanding, I think is probably something that we as a village staff probably need to work on. And elected officials too. I think we could all probably share in that.
And yeah, let me just, more to help with your answer though. The one thing with TIF and school funding is but for the TIF and the business and the building, there wouldn't be the additional tax dollars to go to the schools. And that's why they are always generally supportive of every TIF project that I've ever brought before them or been part of, because it is kind of building a savings for them where they will get dollars. And so as long as we manage well and we have successful TIFs, which fortunately we have a staff that does a good job, it is a benefit to the schools, not a detriment to their funding. And I'm sorry.
no, and I actually do agree with that. I guess part of the conversation is, are we doing or can we do a better job in identifying when a TIF project or a development might negatively impact or over impact the population growth as it relates to kids in the schools. And I think that's kind of like what we did with this development or the proposed development out by Fleet Farm. We talked about that and how was that going to affect the school as far as the number of kids. And I think that's a conversation that we probably, if we're going to be using TIF, then I think that's a conversation we really need to have.
Yeah, I would, so yes, I would also say that the school district is a piece of that, but also our PD, our fire and EMS are also a piece of that, specifically as it relates to housing as well. And that is, I think I mentioned in the budget presentation for the community development department, something that we're looking to get a better hold of next year with the cost of community services analysis. So I think those types of efforts are probably ongoing.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Yeah, you brought up about your focus groups and stuff, talking about affordable homes. Did you get a consensus as to what's an affordable home? We keep talking about affordable rents, but what's people's perception on you talk about conflicting things. People expect to be able to buy a house for 250,000 when it's not possible. You're talking 400,000. Was there some consensus about what is affordable for a house? Expectations?
I think that's.
I realize it's gonna be smaller lots. It's not gonna be your 2,100 square feet. You're not gonna have granite countertops. But people want a lot of those luxuries, like the development over by Ziggy Field, I forgot what it is. It's a
Diamond
base.
Village.
30, yeah, Diamond. It's 34.9 to start, and then you add this and this, the options, and you're up to 400,000. Was there a consensus?
No, there's,
Ryan?
I wouldn't say there was a consensus. I think it's variable, right? So when and this was a part of the community workshop, just to try to find common terms, right? I think that's an important thing because affordable, when we say that, you say that to 6 different people and people may have 6 different ideas of what that means. And so when we had the workshop on Thursday, we used a common definition of what affordable is, and affordable is at any income level that you may have. You could be earning 200, you could be a high net worth individual and be earning $200,000 a year. Affordable is spending no more than 30% of your gross income on housing related costs, and that includes utilities. So that's a mortgage, property taxes, utilities. And that's the definition that we orient around. So when you're talking about what it's, I'm trying to find what I would say would be that specifically from the focus groups consensus. The consensus need was, here you go, I'll highlight it here. Specifically mentioned was the need for rental housing affordable to those earning $20 an hour while paying for childcare. Now that was more of those were coming from the workforce level conversations that we were having in the focus groups. But from a price standpoint for a single family home, that's an impossible question to answer. And you're just not going to find a $250,000 house in Dane County.
Right, and I understand that, but a lot of people don't. Some people think that, you know, it's gonna take 2 of those people just to be able to afford a rent in some situations. Not even, they wanna own a home. But that's kind of impossible around the country, not just us. Sharon touched on these 4-story apartments. In this survey, it says smaller apartments and larger apartments. What's the different definition of that? You know, I would consider the smaller apartments to be what's projected by Fleet Farm, or, you know, what was projected by Norway Grove Church, you know, 8 to 12 units. That would be my small apartments. Large apartments would be like by the ice rink, that type. Is that correct?
So when we were having this conversation and drafting the survey, and so this was the joint survey. So it was myself, Jamie Rabarchik with the Village of Windsor, and then Kristen Runge, who's the community development, I don't remember what her title is, director. I think Jamie wanted it initially to be, and we felt that it was better to not be detailed with the unit size on the smaller versus larger, and to get more of a sentiment and let people make the distinction in their own minds of, hey, I don't like large apartment buildings or small. So we didn't define it. As more of a conceptual level thing. That was the approach that we took. Certainly, you know, I guess you could do it in a way that's 4 to 8 units or this, but you might have an understanding of what an 8-unit building looks like. Somebody else might say, well, that's a small apartment building, or that's a large apartment. So that was the approach we take. We didn't actually define it.
But something like the Park Apartments, you'd consider that large.
Personally, I would.
Okay, well, in the survey, 55% said they don't want something like that. Where only 15% definitely said they do,
Okay. Of the larger apartment buildings?
right? So that's in the survey. That was just an observation.
Sure.
Thanks. Let's move over to Bill and then we'll come back to you for more follow-up.
I think, you know, in reviewing the report, one thing to keep in mind is, you know, as diverse of people that we have here in the community, a diverseness in jobs from all salary levels. You know, it was important for us to involve many different groups. And so when you talk about bill affordability and what does that mean, is there a defined, it changes with the type of job, whether you're married or not. You know, you could have a 600 square foot apartment unit that could cost twice as much as the 3,000 square foot apartment unit. But depending on the job, depending on what the taste is of that person or that family, or what they need to be able to access other services, may determine where they live within the community itself. It also may determine whether someone moves out of their house for a condo or for an apartment, et cetera. I think the idea here is to provide you with some data points, not necessarily saying that, you know, these are the end all points here, but to help you make a decision on, okay, how do we start to establish the housing types in the forest that is needed to service the people that want to live here, want to work here, want to play here. And so I would encourage you to keep an open mind about that as we go through our process here to look at what options we potentially have to implement some of these strategies.
Thank you, Bill. Alex, do you want to continue?
Yeah, so just to piggyback off on that too, bringing us up to the section about a mix of housing, that was one of the things, and Sharon and Brandy chime in if you want, so I don't have to hear my own voice for the whole time, is the diversity of housing types too, different options. We heard that a number of times. And I think that's also reflected in the survey too, is just a diverse kind of housing mix. So again, happy to take questions on a specific strategy, but I will say that ultimately, I guess it'd be helpful for us as staff to hear from you all if there are one or two like hot button priority, hey, let's do this, and you can chew on it for a while. I know I just gave it to you in relatively short time here to think about, that we can then say, okay, let's make this a very immediate term priority. I will say that there are some things that are included in here which are likely to just be coming up naturally as we have some different things that are occurring. For example, one of the recommendations has to do with the extension of TIF for housing. We have potentially a TIF district that may be reaching the point of getting ready to close, that we could have that discussion. Not saying it's something we need to do, but we have those discussions. So I think there's two ways that some of this stuff is going to come up. There's a naturally occurring situations which will be coming up, but I'd also welcome your input to say, hey, we got to do this in the next however many months.
Rebecca. Oh, I'm sorry, Sharon?
Yeah, no, I just raised my hand. I want to just emphasize something that Alex said about the mix of housing, that in the community meeting, we were not asking specifically what housing is needed, because we had heard a lot about that already, and we wanted to get to strategies. But I want to remind everybody with the focus groups, across all of the focus groups, we heard very strongly that it was super important that people who worked in the village could reside in the village, that it was important to pay attention to increasing the amount of housing that was affordable to employees. In that, enterprise within DeForest is growing, whether those are large-scale businesses or small-scale locally owned businesses. They're all having trouble with issues of employees living quite far away. And especially in the winter months, that affects them. But it's more of also just a preference that you want a community where you have people who are of various income levels and employed in various types of jobs. So I just wanted to note that that came across very strongly in the focus groups, the need for both workforce housing and ability for seniors to downsize and stay in the village.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thanks. Just two basic things here. One, I really appreciate this write-up. I'm going to be delving deep into it. I think it's going to be very useful. One thing that I'm really, I want to see some, I like the idea of looking at the zoning and the regulations and stuff like that. I think that's some good areas to be streamlining, maybe reconsidering some things that we have traditionally done that maybe or maybe don't. Maybe they do, maybe they don't still make sense. I think that's a good idea to look at that. So I look forward to seeing what P and Z might look at on that. The other thing that Sharon was just talking about, you know, and I agree. I think it's important that people who work here have an opportunity to live here too. That said, where do you draw the line as far as who's responsible for making sure that the housing is here and who's not responsible? And we've got companies, we've got, I'd like to see if there's even a remote possibility of companies who are having some workforce issues, possibly partnering with some of these developers to get some of this housing. And I would welcome the opportunity to consider that and maybe even include some TIF for something like that, because I could see that as a real good partnership between people who are already here, helping not only themselves, but the community members here in the community to be able to live here. So I'd like to see that as a conversation that we maybe start having. I don't know that we've had that one before.
Okay.
Jim?
And sorry, sorry to be maybe a bit pessimistic or realist about this. When I hear a lot of the different things when we're talking about the zoning, I would say that's conversations that we have had numerous times. I can specifically say the traditional zoning. I can safely say that we've been talking about that for 10 years. So we got to make it a priority if we actually want to do it. So that can be part of our budget if that is something that we want to do. But I commend you for taking this on and for having it presented to us in a package. But if we wanted to make a priority, we got to actually start working towards these things.
And as you've noted before, Jim, there are lots of different strategies we can look at, from providing land at some sort of reduced cost to, developing partnerships that are pretty different than we've done before, and providing some incentives to developers, looking at all the resources that are out there, tax breaks, et cetera. What I found when I was working with a Ford Foundation grant on housing issues back in the 80s, late 70s, I guess it was. And they were, one of the things we learned were, until there was something real, tangible for businesses to put their arms around, they didn't really get involved. But if in fact there was something real that could really help not only their workers, but the community around their workforce, then they would come to the table. So I think it behooves us to figure out some ways and things that we as a village might offer that would be an incentive to developers and employers, and then to figure out what other resources are out there. So I think we have a lot of work to do on this issue, and it's not as easy to do as many other things that have come to us have seemed to have been. So it's a tough issue. Thanks, Jim, or Bill, you wanna?
This kind of works off what Trustee Witherspoon said, and it's in the study, is the issue is too big for one company. It's not like we have say an Epic or Oscar Mayer or an American Family with multiple resources, a lot of employees. So it would be important for a consortium of these different companies, say, just not particular American Potato or Ameripac, Potato, EVCO, something like that, to get those groups together. I know you've talked to them. Individually, they can't do much, but it would benefit each other by their coming together as a larger group.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think actually, my predecessor, Michelle, was trying to tackle some of that from a transportation perspective at one point too. So, yep. Takes a number of people working together to make that stuff happen.
Can we go that way or because it obviously in the study, it shows that we can't just rely on one to take a lead. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, I mean, that would take some more conversations, but it's worth having them. So,
Okay. Anything else, Alex, that you want to share with us?
Sharon or Brandy, anything that either of you want to add?
My grandson was very complimentary of the pizza that you chose. How did they know they brought my favorite pizza? So thank you.
Good. Thank you.
I'll
Thank you.
just share that it's probably a beginning and there's lots of information here to digest, but it does the whole notion of a partnership between developers and employers. There's models out there where that's been done, and it could be that a next step would be to find those models and to have those presentations and to just learn about examples of how to be creative.
And I think that's a really good point, Sharon. I mean, USDA has had some real important strategies for housing development in rural areas in past decades. I'm old, it's showing here now. But so has the Ford Foundation and so has other foundations. And actually the federal government's put money into housing before. And looking at some of those to see what might be changeable or applicable to current situations is worth the time and effort if we can figure out how to get the resources and time to do it. All right. Anything else on this? Otherwise, we will move to updates real quickly. Bill, do you have anything?
I just want to report quickly here. As you know, the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District is going through their budgeting process. We've been providing updates in regards to their future increases. Their deadline to submit public comment, written public comment is October 11th. And we do intend to submit comments in regards to the relationship of that budget with the Executive Council.
Okay. Carol? Chief Olson? Judd's not here. Is anyone speaking for him?
Judd's here if you need.
Do you have anything you want to share for an update?
Nothing that's urgent, nope.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you on there. Glad to have you. Alex, do you have an update? Callie?
Just real quick, I'm happy to announce that Julie McHugh has accepted the part-time position at the front desk. So she will be starting on October 7th and will be working Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay, good. That's exciting. Yeah. Reese, do you have anything?
No update.
All right, good. We don't have a closed session in committee of the whole, so unless there's any other. Deshidra, was your hand up?
No, I was just using all my celebration emojis for Julie's announcement.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else to come before this committee, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 5:55, and I would say we'll take a 5 minute break. And then we will start our regular village board meeting. I'm sure there is enough coffee tonight. Not too. I mean, it depends on how you got. The board meeting has some items that might get a little noise, but I don't know why the audience is here. I don't know, but clearly they have an agenda.
I don't.
It's a casual observer.
Right, and I really.
With respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, Town of Westport Incorporation petition tonight, and then section 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes for purposes of considering employment promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Tonight, Village Administrator Annual Performance Evaluation. Item 5, consent agenda. Does anyone want either item separate? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to move to public appearances. We have a couple for tonight. We will start with Andrew Brickle. Did I say that right? And you'll want to turn the mic on, just press the button until it turns green and talk pretty close to it.
Good evening, Village Board. My name is Andrew Brickle. My family has been a member of the community since 2015.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes,
Thank
it's
you.
Andrew Brickle and it's 505 Valley Drive.
There we go. It doesn't like us tonight. Let's start over.
Okay. Good evening, Village Board. My name is Andrew Brickle. My family has been a member of this community since 2015. My youngest son attends Yahara Elementary and my oldest is a fourth grader at Harvest. I'm here today as the president of Madtown BMX, which is located at 6996 Hickory Lane. For the past 13 years, we've been able to operate at our current location because of the generosity of Chris Evans, allowing us to use this property. With all things, times change, and Chris Evans is choosing to sell the land. Madtown BMX is a local 501c nonprofit organization, which is run solely by local volunteers. We are one of over 375 sanctioned tracks in the US, 4 of them being in Wisconsin. Our sanctioning body is USA BMX. Madtown BMX has been a valuable member of the community throughout the years. We've been an active member of the annual 4th of July parade for the past 9 years and have been members of the DeForest Chamber of Commerce for just as many. We at Madtown BMX know this might be a transition period for our organization, and we're open to have conversations with the village board to see what our future in DeForest is. The property that we're currently located at has been a great fit for us. We have been able to build a track that is unique for most tracks in the Midwest. We pride ourselves in having a track that can be enjoyed by both new riders and highly competitive riders. We also have the capabilities to design a mountain bike trail along the hills and valleys of that property. We have invited local high school mountain bike clubs to our track in the past to try to harvest a connection between the two sports. Our organization and the sport of BMX is growing in popularity. Through the hard work of our volunteers, we have been increasing our local rider numbers by having a beginner league twice a year the past 2 seasons. This 5-week class introduces new riders and their families into the BMX world. Our program has an outstanding 95% rider retainability after the 5-week class is over. Our local riders are not just from the Windsor DeForest area. Our rider footprint has riders coming from 9 surrounding counties. These local riders then bring business to local restaurants, stores, and gas stations. In closing, I would just like you all to know that we have a great organization at Madtown BMX. And now it's a crucial point for both Madtown BMX and DeForest. I hope that with the village board's help, we will be able to keep Madtown BMX in DeForest for many more years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We don't do exchange during these presentations, so I'm going to ask Natalie to come up, but I will note for the board that I'm going to address this issue in my president's report. Natalie?
Since it's still green, oh, I think it's okay, right?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board members. Thank you for taking the time to listen. My name is Natalie Baldus, and I am one of the many parent volunteers at Madtown BMX. Do you need my name is Natalie Baldus. My address is 1501 Twilight Trail, Madison, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
So I've been part of the BMX track for at least 10 years. And for the last 13 years, the BMX track has been growing and unique sport attraction in DeForest, Dane County, and all of southern Wisconsin. If you're not familiar, you may have at least seen us rolling around in the July 4th parade. Since the inception of our track, we have only been able to be here through the gracious support of Mr. Chris Evans. Enough can't be said for his advocacy of the youth community and his openness to seeing the BMX track grow and provide countless kids access to healthy bicycling habits. But as the growth and the needs of the village have changed, so have those of Mr. Evans' land interests. And as such, as Andy said, the land on which the BMX track resides is currently for sale, with some of the parcels being rezoned from agricultural to industrial. This natural evolution brings the future of the BMX track into question. As an all-volunteer nonprofit organization, we operate from April to October. We do not have the means to purchase this land, nor are we able to fund moving the physical assets to an undetermined alternative location. So in speaking here tonight, my expectation is to not arrive at a magical resolution for how Madtown BMX can remain, but rather to inform the village board of the recreational asset that is at stake and begin a discussion that is in the best interest of this community. We have helped kids and adults discover bicycling skills and interests they never knew they had. We've become the summer sport for hundreds of riders. We've hosted major national events that bring out-of-town dollars to our hospitality and retail services in DeForest. Just 2 weeks ago, our Gold Cup event brought 1,800 people to the BMX track, some from as far away as California. It was wonderful to have the village president come to the event and represent DeForest. In closing, I'll say we are here to work with the village and all interested parties to keep the wheels turning, and I look for ways to continually support the cycling community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Was that everyone who filled out a form?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We will talk more. Presentation by DeForest Area School District regarding district update and referendum. Hi, welcome. We can put another chair up there, so.
Okay. There are a series of slides, I think, too, I'm assuming. So, okay, so thank you for having us. I'm Rebecca Tates, the superintendent of the district, and I'll have Gail and then Kathy introduce.
My name is Gail Lovick, and I am the school board president.
I'm Kathy Davis Phillips. I'm the business director for the district.
And we are here to do the annual update that I've been very happy to be here before to talk about what we're doing in the district. And then we also want to make sure there's an awareness of the referendum. Okay. There we go. So some of our facts at a glance. This is one that I like to remind community members that we serve over 100 square miles. So when we do call a snow day, there's a reason. It's not just the town streets. And then the other thing that I like to point out on this is that we have over 20 or about 20 languages in the district. So we are a diverse school district, and that's awesome. You can see some of the other facts there that are very much in line with the rest of the state of Wisconsin in many ways. Our enrollment is that we are about 4,150 students. We grow about 50 students a year in the last couple years. This last year, we're getting the third Friday count finalized, but it's closer to 100 in this last year. So we are a growing district, as you are well aware. And our vision and mission is to work on engaging, challenging, and inspiring our students so that they learn. And we follow a lot of research-based methods. One of them in particular is around the National Redefining Ready indicators, making sure our kids are college, career, and life ready. I'm going to turn it over to Gail about community engagement.
Thank you. So as we've done before, we've started what we call Framework for Our Future back in 1999. That tradition has continued. We do a big framework every 10 years and what we call a check-in every 5 years. So the soonest one we've done is the Framework for Your Future 3.5 in 2023. And then you'll see after that, we also, the board actually engaged with a bunch of different community group meetings, about 19 of them in 2024. And then beyond that, this spring, we actually engaged with about 27 different groups specific to school funding and referendum potential. Sorry, we can just scroll the next slide, maybe. It's fine. So like Rebecca talked about, what we do is we monitor student achievement, and that comes in multiple different ways for our board, and that's built upon those community values. So of course, you'll see in there academic performance. It's exactly what you think, the math, the reading, all that good stuff. Then you'll see in there self-directed complex thinkers and collaborative and responsible citizens. Those are built based off of our community values and things that we try and get our kids in our school district, college, career, and life ready.
So I'm going to give you an update on how we're doing with that work. We are above state average in the areas of literacy and math as measured by our state assessments. We are in the exceeds expectations category on the state report cards with DPI. We were just ranked as a best high school last May by US News and World Report, and we're very proud of that. We also do a student engagement survey that gets at those other of results that Gail just spoke about, at really checking on our students if they're feeling safe, connected, and also their well-being, their wellness. And those are questions that we, on a 4-point scale, and we have goals set around all students achieving a 3 or higher. And overall, all of our students are meeting those goals, which means really that's the staff helping our students feel that way as well. And then in the annual report, which we will get you copies of, there are measures of our national around those redefining ready indicators. Some of those that stood out this last year is 19% of our students had workplace learning opportunities. And we also had almost 100 different industry credentials that our students, our graduates were able to get. And that includes anything from welding to certified nursing assistants, things like that. So they're getting ready for the career world. We implemented the graduation requirement fully this last year around a financial literacy requirement. We're very proud of that because we want our students to go off into the world knowing what kind of debt they can go, or what's the impact of debt, especially as you talk about student loans. Actually, that became a state mandate in January of this last year that all districts need to have a financial literacy requirement as a graduation requirement within 2 years. And we have already done that work. So we're also feeling good because once in a while you get ahead of the game, and not all the time. And then the last thing with our graduation requirements is around academic and career plans. I know some of you have sat in on those when our students have presented those. Our seniors present the work of setting goals. They set those actually in middle school and then revise them every year of high school to, again, it's goals around their ACT scores, around what they might want to do after high school, career pathway learning, things like that. And you would be all welcome to sit on those panels this spring too. We always need community to help with that. I'll just give you more here. Some of our biggest challenges are around funding. We do maintain a AA+ bond rating, so we're very proud of that and we want to maintain that. That helps us be able, when we need to build a building, be able to borrow money at a cheaper rate. We are struggling with the lack of state funding. Another challenge for us is that we are identified by the Department of Public Education for the over-identification of students, Black students in the area of special education. So we have specific goals and action steps around that. And then we continue to have the competing mandates and also meeting those academic and social emotional learning needs. So all the good things that are happening in the district come at a price, of course. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to give you an update on some of the funding.
Thank you. So this chart is basically a comparison of revenue limits from the 23-24 school year for Dane County. In Dane County, you can see on this chart that we actually are second from the bottom for what we have to work with compared to all the other Dane County schools, except for Little Deerfield. This has been very challenging for us as a growing district and the need to attract and retain staffing and be able to essentially just provide the same amount of services as our peers in Dane County, having the disadvantage of having less to work with than the rest of the county is a challenge. The last column on this chart is also districts that have gone to an operating referendum since 2020. And why 2020 is important is because that was right before we had the state biennial budget where we had a $0 increase on our revenue limit for 2 years in a row, which at the time of some of the most craziest inflation that we've seen, that was also very challenging for all of Wisconsin public schools. And to make ends meet, districts were forced essentially to ask their community to help with an operating referendum. You can see in Dane County, that has happened at every single district except for DeForest until now. And some of these districts, actually the ones bolded with a star next to them, an asterisk, are going again in November. I do want to mention that McFarland's failed in April, and so they're going again for a different amount. In responding to the funding challenges, there's a lot that we've been doing for last couple of years, I would say, that the board has been involved in administration and staff. One of the things that helped us to not have to go to referendum until now is going into that 2020 era. We have been considered a very fiscally strong district at that AA+ Standards and Poor's rating. That basically allowed us to stretch out the need and gave us the ability to use reserves to help make ends meet, which we are doing. But the board very consciously chose to use fund balance reserves prior to seeking support from our community. And that total is it's going to be between last year and this year, about $4 million. That's not sustainable, obviously, with recurring costs being in the service industry. Our costs aren't one-time costs like those dollars are. Some other things that the board has been doing to prepare for this and to offset the impact on the community taxpayers is they have been restructuring debt, basically paying off debt early to reduce the debt levy. So if the referendum would pass, our debt levy would decrease at the same time. We've also stretched out the use of federal grants. We just finished using some of the pandemic grants that we got a few years ago and stretched out to the very last minute and used every penny. But that again is not, those are one-time funds too, and having to use them for reoccurring costs is a challenge and not sustainable. And lastly too, I just wanted to add, we're a growing district. Rebecca mentioned up 100 students this year. It's very challenging to try to find things to cut when we really should be adding to meet the needs of our growing population. But we have been very careful about the hires we have made and have concentrated just on like the core classes. But that too is, we know that we're falling behind on a lot of the things that other districts in Dane County are able to offer for programming.
Right. The district currently has one of the highest student to staff ratios in the county, and we have the highest student to leader ratio in Dane County. So as we've been adding staff, we've been focused on those core classes, math, science, social studies, English language arts, and then of course, like the traditional, grade level, like third grade. But where we're seeing those class sizes really grow is in the encore areas, which is art, music, phy ed, the specialized classes at the high school. Those are in the 30s. We actually have a couple geometry classes in the 30s as well, which we are not comfortable with sustaining. We will lose teachers over that. So we are going, the board made the decision in August after several community sessions. We put in front of the community $6.5 to $13.5 million range. Starting back last spring and all those sessions, getting feedback on what's the tax support with the information of what we're doing as a district. And then the board and administration worked very hard on taking that feedback and determining what number do we move forward with. Again, 13.5 million would be what inflation since 2010 would have brought us from the state funding. So that's why 13.5 million was laid out there. And so we heard from our sessions that the tax impact is hard. I mean, it's hard to pay more taxes. So the board really took that into consideration, and we've landed on the 7.9 million, which will help with retaining staff, which is an important factor. We need to support instructional programming. The 3 things on here, other districts in Dane County offer, and we don't have these things. So our core classroom teachers are being asked to intervene on behavior when there's some pretty significant behaviors at times. Math intervention, they also, core classroom teachers need to do, and gifted and talented programming. And those are things that we heard from the community at the sessions. They want more of, they see it in other districts in our area. Again, we want to retain staff. We have 16 positions that are funded off of those ESSER dollars, which are the COVID relief dollars. We want to manage those class sizes and compensation within 5% of Dane County average. So we're not seeking, the district isn't seeking to be a leader in compensation, seeking to just be within that Dane County average. And maintaining our beautiful facilities. We are so lucky and fortunate to have the community support for our buildings. We want to make sure that the roof stays healthy, the heating and cooling stays healthy, so that that investment is protected. And then you hear about school safety quite a bit in the news. We do want to add an SRO that would be in partnership with the Village of Windsor for the other side of the district. That's the operational referendum. And then the tax impact is what people always want to know, most important. 72 cents per $1,000 or $72 per 100,000. And so when I was at your strategy session last week about housing, and it was interesting to hear the Dane County expert talk about the average house in Dane County is about 420, I think she said. So if we look at a $400,000 house, it would cost about $288 a year or $24 a month. We're holding information sessions starting tomorrow at the DeForest Public Library, and several sessions. So please, if you're hearing from the community, point them there. We would love to be able to engage with the community some more about the questions they have. We also have a lot of information on the website. And I'm always willing to meet with people too, or have them call. So thank you for having us.
Questions? Rebecca, and then Jim, and then Bill.
Just a couple here, 2 or 3. As far as our kids with disabilities, I've heard mixed input on this one. How much does the state help you with on that?
Please.
Answer that one.
As far as the funding for that, because that's an unusual burden.
Correct. At one point, the state had promised 2/3 funding. We're now about that 36, 30, 35 that we get back. So about 1/3.
Have they said anything in terms of increasing that moving
This-
forward, or?
It has been proposed for many of the state bienniums, but has just never made.
Just never made it. Okay. The other question I have is related to what I know our current rate per child is 11,941. With this, what would that put that at?
We will probably be, assuming the current situation stays, it would put us in about the middle of Dane.
Okay, so it would be a much more balanced
Yes.
amount.
Yeah, but with some of those other districts going twice, I don't think it's going to maintain at the middle.
Yeah.
That was one of the considerations that the board made when they landed on the 7.9. Is that if we want to pay our people within 5% of Dane County average, 2/3 of our budget is about staffing. So it's important that we get that at least into the middle of the chart, because that would be, if we're trying to work towards average in Dane County.
Sure. And then kind of the last little bit of my question, it's kind of a two-parter. One, is this like a one-time referendum or is this like a continuing, we're at this new level and this is how much it's going to be?
It is a recurring referendum.
Okay, so it would basically increase that budget to that new amount moving forward. And then, okay, so then obviously I've heard from people in the community. I'm sure you have too. I'm sure you've heard a lot. Very mixed. I mean, some people are for this, some people are very much against it. I'm just taking it all in. My biggest concern is for our folks that are on very fixed incomes. They're already seeing very significant tax increases over the past 2-3 years, plus all the hidden taxes with inflation and stuff like that. So I'm just concerned how you would approach, how do you talk to the folks on those fixed incomes?
Yeah, so we did. That was one of the largest groups or one of the most impactful groups that we talked to in the spring, was going to the Cornerstone Community Center and speaking to those people that were like, we support our schools, we love our schools, we know that they are strong in our community, but we just can't afford 13.5 million. We just can't. And so the board really understood that, hence why we went back and we're like, oh, great. We can't ask this, right? Our community is telling us that they can't afford it, right? And so that's when we went back kind of, I don't want to say to the drawing board, but that's kind of where we got that range from, and where those groups were really telling the board where they were comfortable lying.
Yeah, because everybody I've talked to is very supportive of the school. That is absolutely not the issue. So I appreciate this information very, very much. Thank you.
Jim.
A lot of hard work.
I just wanted to question a couple of things. You said we're the highest student to a teacher rate. Well, student
Staff.
to leader, I think you said we're the highest.
Yes.
And the student to teacher were,
One of the highest, student to staff. That includes support staff.
okay. Is that something that you publish or that we can find on the
Yeah.
website? Okay.
Yep.
That, and then you also mentioned that I hadn't heard, and I think it's exciting, so I'm wondering where to find it. You said that we're showing up as one of the better high schools in the US News Report. So
That's on our website. US News and World Report has ranked us as a best high school.
okay,
Mhm.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I got this in the mail the other day and just wanted to ask you about the estimate. Assumes a 3% increase in the equalized rate. Now, what has been the average the past 5 years? I think ours went up 11.7% this year.
Yeah,
I see that's not going to be 4 times that, but it's a fraction. If the past equalized rates have gone up, I think 10% last year, or,
Bill will.
yeah.
that is a very conservative estimate. I do expect that they most likely will be higher. As we have more people, more construction going on, which will lower the tax impact then.
So a higher
Right.
can you explain a higher equalized rate? Like that's
Oh.
better for the tax situation.
Yes, yeah. That's the reason I use the conservative numbers, because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I'm typically pretty low in the values, just to not overinflate something unnecessarily.
And then earlier in our housing strategy talks, we talked about additional people. We're either built or are in the process of planning for 1,365 apartments just in DeForest. We're not talking about Windsor. And I think the number is 1.65 or somewhere around per apartment. That's 220 students. Are we prepared for that in the next 3 years?
We are. I think it's 0.6 for every apartment built. And we use Mark Roffers to do our studies as well. And I know he works with you at the village. He also works with the Village of Windsor, City of Madison. So I feel like we have as latest up-to-date numbers as we can.
Okay, I just want to make sure. The ESSER funds, you call, they're there's reoccurring, you hire somebody on a grant or the ESSER funds. They run out, now you have to fund those. How much of that do we have to fund?
Currently, we had
The $1.5 million.
16 FTEs in that, the ESSER dollars. And at the time that wasn't necessarily a choice for us to do. When we had a $0 increase in the biennial budget, we were basically told to use federal dollars to make up for the loss, which a lot of districts ended up doing.
So
to do.
that was the messaging from the state legislature to public schools, is to use the ESSER dollars. And that, because we are a growing district, that's our operational expenses, is people. And so that's also why all these districts are going to operational referendum.
Oh, right, we're not the only ones. There's many school districts that use the pandemic funds and now are caught short.
Because there were no other funds.
Bill Chang, you wanted to say something here.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify the 3% over the equalized, that's year over year, is that correct? Okay, so the state's year to year net new construction basis equalized value, we've been around 5%, 4% over the last couple of years. The 11% bill that you're talking about is the estimated assessed value year over year, a little bit different calculation.
Jim?
Decidre.
Desidre, thank you. Desidre?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for coming out and sharing this information. It's really great information. And I really also wanted to say thank you for highlighting all of the things that the school district is doing, because this referendum is different from the previous referendum. And I think it's great to highlight the work that's being done and the importance of the referendum, so that we can continue all the great work. And I do want to highlight how DeForest is always somehow ahead of the curve. We saw that with COVID. We instituted things before we actually really needed to, which was great. And we did it again with literacy and financial literacy and making sure that our kiddos were prepared for life post high school. And now it seems like the state has caught up with what we are already doing. And once again, I sat on the panels, and to watch our high schoolers, our seniors, pitch and show what they've done from middle school to high school and how they're trying to enter into the next phase of their journey as adults and explain their life is just, it's encouraging, right? And the testimonies that they share of what their high school adults have poured into them and how they feel like they're ready to take that next step is a testament to, the staff and the teachers and the support staff. And I think it would be great if you guys continue to highlight these things as you share the importance of this particular referendum, because it is hard. Everybody is feeling the economic pinch right now. And as we feel that pinch, it's always great to bring people back to the why. And the why is our children. The why is our students and the next generation that is really supposed to move the mark forward and carry the torch. And I hope that we continue to bring people back to that message. Yes, dollars and cents matter, but what we're putting forth is the next generation of leaders. And DeForest is doing, yes, we have a lot of work to do in our school district. Don't get me wrong. But the work that we are doing in our children should be celebrated. And we can only do that by pouring into the very individuals that are pouring into our children. And so I hope that you guys continue to spread that message of the financial literacy that we're doing, the college and the life readiness. I am in a lot of different meetings around Dane County and how we're pouring into the trades. We are really suffering with trade workers, and the industry is suffering with different workers. And we're doing that. We're preparing our students, not just for college, but for trade work and meeting the economic pinch across the industry. And that's what DeForest is doing. And so I really commend our community, but I also commend our school district and what we're doing. And I hope we highlight that with what we're doing with this referendum. So kudos, and I hope that we continue to spread that message as we talk about the dollars and cents.
Thank you, Tashidra. All right. Anything else? If not, we do appreciate the update. I got this presentation at the Business Development Group meeting, and I found it very useful, and it helped me to focus more on where you are. So we will look forward to it being successful. We'll look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you. We appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to have a presentation by TDS DeForest regarding proposal to construct an industrial building on Cake Parkway. Well, hello. Welcome. You know about, yeah, the mics and how to make them turn green.
Got it.
All right. I think everyone knows these gentlemen, but maybe just for the sake of those in the audience that don't, you could give your name and company.
I'm Sam Dickman. Address is 626 East Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee, 53202. I am principal in Dickman Company, and we are real estate developers in Milwaukee. We have had the pleasure of putting up 3 buildings so far in the village of DeForest. We're happy to say all of them are leased and doing very well. And so to continue that trend, we propose to start another one, a 4th, on some land we have under contract on Cake Parkway. This building will be essentially a twin to 2 of the 3 that are up. One is on Stevenson and Yahara. The other one is on Little Potato Way, where we have tenants. As of this date, we do not have a tenant, but it's a spec building, and we wouldn't be putting it up if we didn't have confidence that we'll be able to find tenants and continue this. And after this building is full, then and hopefully we'll just keep marching on with buying land from Mr. Evans and filling up his 100 and so acres. So we haven't quite decided whether we're going to start construction in November or wait until spring, but whichever we decide to do, the construction will be about 9 months or so, give or take, depending on the tenant, the weather, and some other variables over which we have little control. Along with us putting up the building, I believe the village is prepared to extend Cake Parkway so that our tenants can have access. Can't have a building where the tenants can't get in and out, obviously, an impairment. I think we figure that the value of this project will be somewhere around $18 million. Again, it'll be at least that, but depends on tenant improvements, and as of this date, we're not sure what those might be. I guess let's open it up to questions.
Well, Bill wants to say something, but after that, for this woman who's challenged with directionally, you might tell us which way this building's facing. is the northeast corner towards the interstate?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, then I can figure it out from there. Bill?
So this presentation relates to two separate items on the agenda. First, being the, item 10.1, which is an ordinance, 2024-20, which is a rezoning ordinance. And then also relates to the development agreement discussion or negotiation in closed session. So wanted to make that relationship for you all tonight.
Okay. Rebecca?
First off, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. As far as this particular, the other properties that you referred to, I was driving past on 51 and saw it off to the right, and I was like, that's a nice building. So it's going to be similar to that one?
Exactly like that building.
Okay. And similar type, anticipated lessees and stuff like that?
Correct. If we were fortunate enough, we could get one tenant for the entire building and we'd be done. But life doesn't always work out that way. The building you're referring to, we have two tenants in that building. As a matter of fact, Big Joe, which is the material handling company, just had a grand opening last week. This is their new headquarters building, and they brought in people from all over the world, not just the country, and they were ecstatic as to how the building looked and being located in DeForest, and worked out very well. So hopefully there'll be some ambassadors for us to talk to other people and wishfully locate here as well.
Good. Other questions? Well, it's been, Bill?
I just want to clarify, there are two buildings that front 51. And so,
Not Little Potato.
this building is reflective of the one on Little Potato Way.
No, I know that. Yeah, I know it's on Little Potato, but I'm saying not Little Potato Company.
Right.
It's right there by,
Well, there's that,
in proximity to it.
there's that one, and then there's the one with Frito-Lays and PepsiCo.
No, I'm not talking about Frito.
Which is my favorite of the three.
That one's a very impressive building.
Yeah, they are. Well, you guys have been successful in getting these buildings leased, and we're very appreciative of your efforts and your work. I know you've got a lot of work to do with planning and zoning and getting your plans together. I think the board looks forward to hearing more about this as it goes forward. Do you have any comments or questions for us?
Oh, I think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship between the board and the village and our development company. And I think it's not just us that feels welcomed by DeForest, but all the other developments that you have coming into the village certainly speaks well of a attitude toward progress and getting things done. So we appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you. And say hi when you leave to your neighbors in the back.
We'll do that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Drive safely tonight. Okay. Number 9.1. There is no old business at 8, so we're moving on to new business. Discussion regarding LRS residential service complaints and missed garbage and recycling pickup. Judd is on. And gentlemen, you want to come forward and he was on. Oh, he's on the phone now. I see that. Okay. Bill, do you want to do it?
Yeah, so this item was a request of the village board trustees to have a discussion with LRS in regards to complaints that we've been receiving from residents. And as part of the packet, there's been some information provided by LRS for missed pickups. And so this is kind of the first step in trying to address this issue. We understand, or we know that we've had more than 35 complaints come into us. And so according to the agreement, the service from as part of the agreement was that LRS take on the complaints. And so we just want to make sure that is clear from the board, and then provide an opportunity to have this discussion as we hopefully can move on or move forward in this relationship. Judd, anything you want to add?
I apologize. I'm having a computer issue. I didn't hear what you said, Bill. I was trying to log back in on my phone so I could hear, so you could hear me. I included all the information that I had for LRS, so if I'm being duplicative, I apologize. To share with the board. But the board asked for this discussion to be here, and as I put forth in the memo, I had requested that LRS provide us with ways they were going to improve services back in July 25th. They shared that with me, and then on September 18th, I requested a report of their missed pickups for 2024. They're required to keep track of these per our contract, which I had included. They showed 35 missed pickups listed. However, as I had talked with Mike from LRS, that is an inadequately low number, as I know we've gotten far more calls than that. And most notably, a couple that are common reoccurrences weren't even listed on there. So I do have some concerns with them. They have increased, or I think have done a better job the last few weeks since they sent over the plan for improvement of services. But it is something that I'm hoping that they're going to get back to delivering the same level of services they did when they first started in the Village of DeForest.
Thank you. And I would have to echo what Judd said. I know that members of the board have all gotten calls. The one thing that's near and dear to every resident's heart is trash pickup. And so it's just not something we can mess around with. And then we make sure their streets are plowed too. So those are important elements. So we're anxious to hear from you. And it would also be good if when you speak, you could identify yourselves. That would be helpful for the board and the audience.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. I wish it was under better circumstances, obviously. And Judd's right. We've had some discussions in the past. I laid out an outline on how we're going to get back to those better services that Judd mentioned. By the way, I'm Mike Lang. I'm the GM of LRS for operations in Wisconsin.
I'm Justin Montani. I'm the municipal services coordinator for LRS.
To Judd's point, I think we've made some drastic changes in the last couple of weeks, probably closer to 2 months. We did make some personnel changes. We had a residential recycling driver out here that started probably in April. We gave him a few months. It did not work out. We moved him into a different line of business. So he's actually coming out now and doing bulk collection in DeForest on your bulk week. We started that a little bit differently than what we've done in the past. We actually put 2 trucks out here last month. One specifically, Pete, doing our trash collection, and now Scott doing bulk assist with some of those larger items that Pete traditionally struggled with in the past. We did put a new recycling driver out here about 8 weeks ago. I think there's been significant improvement in that as well. And we made a management change at the location that the trucks and drivers were coming out of. That manager is no longer in charge. He's not even with the company anymore. You want to add anything?
Yeah, I think, Judd, I was the one that pulled that report that he was requested for the missed pickups. And we have a lot of different ways that our customer service reps are trained to enter things into the system. So there's several different reports that any one of us would be able to run as far as like driver generated issues, just general inquiries, obviously the missed pickups. So there's definitely some, further information that we'd be able to get over to you guys if you were curious to see that information. I think that the current form of communication that we have right now with the garbage email address is working. I think it, gets the information out to all of the important stakeholders, especially within LRS, to be able to communicate these issues and figure out how we're going to get them addressed. One thing that I will note is just that obviously with all of the operational changes that we've had recently, we've had some changes as well with customer service too. We've had a couple of customer service reps within the last couple of months move into some different positions. So it's a matter of getting other reps hired and trained properly. So just working through those. And I think we're getting to a good spot now where those customer service reps that we have brought onto the team are doing a good job. And, like Judd had said, I think that over the past couple of weeks, we've all noticed that the amount of complaints and things that have been brought to our attention have definitely been minimal, at least as far as I can tell via the garbage email address and the phone calls that I'm receiving about any issues in the village. So
What have you done about phone answering? And I see Rebecca has her hand up, but one of the complaints we get is nobody answers the phone when we call that number. And so I called the number and nobody answered the phone and nobody called me back. So where are we on that?
Yeah, genuine concern and great question. To Justin's point, we did make some changes with our CSRs. We also added additional headcount. We're up to 6 CSRs. And we'll probably be adding another one, whether that's a temporary CSR rather than a full-time position. But we also changed the way the phone system has been operating. I don't know if you know more about it than I do as far as the automation portion of it. When we got an influx of calls, it would generate to our automated system. Therefore, it was going into a queue. That meant a CSR had to go back and retrieve that from the queue, either make a phone call or generate an email, depending on how that message came in. That was partially due to not having the right number of CSRs. So again, like I said, we added a CSR and looking at adding another one to help with that influx of calls. Now that service is improving, there'll probably be less calls, less CSRs on phones, generating their quicker phone time. That was the other thing as well.
Okay. Rebecca, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Actually, that was part of my question, but a twofold question. One, following up on that is related to when I've gotten somebody to actually answer the phone, because I'm one of the people that didn't show up on the list for multiple missed pickups. I think it was a lady that I spoke to. It's been several months back. They might need to be trained a little bit better on how to talk with the public. It was a bit abrasive, not horrific, just enough that it was irritating. But the other thing is, was related to that list. And you said you had multiple ways of entering stuff. When I contacted her, then she said, well, we'll get somebody out there later that day. Nobody ever came out. I finally called the village. I said, this is getting crazy. And then eventually somebody came out, I think the next day.
Yeah.
But so I ended up having to follow up with the village just to be able to get something done.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. And if you're having multiple ways of entering this, you may want to look at the system to streamline that. I'm just a suggestion.
Sure.
a way of streamlining that so that it's better, it's easier for you to see.
Yeah.
Rather than looking here and there, and, because you're not going to see everything then. You're not going to
Great
see the
point.
patterns.
It's actually a drop down and they can check which, whether it's a service inquiry, a customer complaint, a missed pick, things of that nature. Justin made a good comment earlier. The CSRs are retrained. To your point, that CSR you're referring to probably doesn't work for us anymore.
Yeah.
As Judd
Probably a
and I,
good thing.
it was. As Judd and I spoke previous to this meeting, I think in part, some of the issues of us not getting it on that report was that garbage generated email would come into BL Town Services. I was on it. I still am. Justin's on it. A lot of times we would just run with it. There was communication with the previous manager. That previous manager would reach out to the driver and get it resolved, or a day later get it resolved, rather than going through the proper channels and systems. And I think that's partly why there's only 35 on that missed pickup report, as there should be more.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I do, when we contracted with you guys, I did have really good high hopes with you all. And I think we can work this out. That's my hope. So
I'm confident we can.
yeah, so thank you.
All right. Bill. Colleen and then Bill. I'm sorry, I missed Colleen.
Anybody can sit there and tell us when we've got complaints that you've improved things, but I think you actually have.
Thank you.
There was a recycling truck went through my cul-de-sac, probably a couple months ago now. And I went behind him and picked up everything that was left laying in the cul-de-sac and down Van Buren Road, and it was really irritating. But it was just that one incident. So I think you did something about it and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill.
What's breadcrumbs in the report? What's that? What's that a code for?
It's actually not a code. Great question. Good observation. We have a camera system in all of our trucks. It's called Third Eye. That camera allows us to look out the windshield and look inside the cab, as well as behind the truck. And in some cases, depending on the type of truck, out the side of the truck and on the top of the truck. A breadcrumb is we can pull the last 8, it goes in 2-hour increments. So 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, that truck was on the road. Every street that truck hit, every house that truck hit, and every tote that truck dumped. That's a breadcrumb trail.
Because you're gonna get people that call up and say, oh, they miss me. Or they didn't have their garbage out. And that's difficult to discern and you're gonna get that. And I realize that. I got a call, it was about the middle of September. It was about 3:30. They had called you guys, got a CSR that kind of lambasted them for calling after 3 o'clock. And that's strike one. And then they told them, well, they missed the whole street. So it was obvious that, excuse me, it just wasn't him. And then they said, we'll get you next week. Well, I can personally, I have no problem. You guys are there at 7 o'clock in the morning every Tuesday or Wednesday. And I could go 2 or 3 weeks without garbage pickup, but my neighbor has to have 2 garbage cans because he's got teenage kids. And to tell somebody, we'll pick you up next week is pretty much unacceptable when it's not their fault.
Agreed.
And hopefully we'll work on that. I guess you guys have had other things or other stories that I can't relate to because I wasn't privileged to them or whatever. But it looks like Judd has, I think it's Judd, Judd wrote up these collection plan. And I think.
I did not.
Judd's been working with.
No,
We've been
I
working with
drafted those
LRS.
up and provided them to Judd.
That's, excuse me, that's Judd's?
No, it's LRS.
Mike,
LRS,
Mike from
and
LRS drafted those.
is that acceptable to us? Is that a reasonable expectation?
I think he's asking you, Judd.
Sorry, I didn't understand. If they can live up to those and deliver, yes, they seem to have improved since some of these changes have been implemented that Mike shared. But you know, I'm gonna be diligent in monitoring the work that they're doing and making sure that they're following through and getting these things accomplished, right? We can't afford to have a repeat of our previous vendor, and LRS, I think, can get back to that quality of service they started with us on, but we'll keep monitoring it.
Would it be a good idea to, take this plan and review it in, say, 3 months and then 6 months? Just as a follow-up to see if it has been improved?
Yep.
Okay, then I'd be happy with that.
All right, thank you. Okay, one more.
Just one last question. In reading through the plan, which I think is fine, I'm kind of like with him. Let's follow up, just make sure everything is going as we should, as expected. As far as it says customer service will take any same day calls and forward off to management dispatch to help, blah, blah, blah. So you've got a lot of people that work and they don't get home until after you guys are closed. So they can leave a message for you. Obviously, technically it's in the same day just after you guys have gone. Then it would hopefully be taken care of the next day.
Yes, unless it fell on a Friday, obviously, then we,
Well, obviously, yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
All right. Hate to put you on the hot seat, but
Oh, it's fine.
as you can see, this is an important item to our residents. So we appreciate your taking time to be here.
Certainly.
We look forward to seeing everything improved and getting back on a good position with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on then. We have a full agenda tonight. Yes, Jim.
I want to bring up maybe a point of order or whatever, but I know we've got people in the audience and I wonder if they're sitting around waiting for your president's report. We want to take things out of order so that can be done.
Well, isn't that nice of you?
I would second that.
All right, I'm happy to do that. If everyone's okay with it, that's an okay thing. I always look to our lawyer to see if I can. All right. Do we need to vote?
I made
Yeah.
no motion, Rebecca seconded it, so.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Here we go. So on the 21st, I was invited to help welcome people who are attending the Gold Cup BMX race out at the track. I had not participated in one of their events before, but I have to tell you, it was exciting and impressive. And it was not only well organized, but the number of people who came from across the country and around the state to participate in that race was amazing. It was also amazing to see how they took an old kind of quarry site and turned it into a track, all with volunteer help and volunteer money. No community, no business put the money in to build that track. Their starting gates, all of the signage. I mean, they do have business sponsors, but it was a very impressive track. I hate to see that they're reluctant to put more money into it till they can figure out how to buy, what is it, 5 you need acres or 3? The reason, the other thing I was impressed with was how they were all ages. So this is not just for kids. There was a woman my age, 74 years old, racing. I was really impressed. I don't know that I could do that, but I was really impressed. It is an important economic impact to our community. They are going to share their economic impact report with us, but it was impressive for me to see what they could generate and how excited people were to be here. I was sorry it rained that weekend. I know that that didn't help you guys, but you know, it was an important event. With ownership of the land, and we haven't quite figured out how to look for sponsors to help us with that, but we are talking about it. You know, they need bathrooms, they need water on site, those sorts of things. And we have brought infrastructure over to that region, but it may in fact be that if they can get ownership of the land, some of those other improvements might be able to happen. They were also very inviting to the mountain bikers. And that was very impressive to me because, you know, that's an issue we've been struggling with. So further discussions about how to maybe include the mountain bike folks in some of their planning and in the use of the area could be of benefit to all of us. So I just wanted to share that. Well, they gave me a lovely plaque, which I left with Bill at this point to display here. And I encourage you all to look at it. I was very, very excited about the event. I know that before the Gold Cup, they had a smaller statewide event there. And they have practices and local events and competitions all the time. So if you can get out there to see the track, when will you stop? Mid-October? End of October? So I just encourage everyone to go out and look at the track and look at all the work they've done and how the topography of the land worked in their favor and how a group of volunteers could really make that happen. So thank you for inviting me. And we look forward to working with you to try and figure out some solutions. So thank you and thanks for coming. All right.
Jane.
Judd has his hand raised also.
Sorry, Judd, please go ahead.
I just wanted to interject and share with you that the village board, it might have been the redevelopment authority, donated chase funds to the BMX track for the chain link fence they have around there. So the village did invest in that.
Cool.
I don't remember how many it was in. I was on the board. I don't remember how many years ago it was. At least a decade or longer. So it was before they just as they opened. So just a FYI.
Thank you. Noted for the record. Yes, Rebecca.
Very quick. I just wanted to mention my direct next door neighbor has some little kids that go out there and they love it very, very much. And apparently he's fearless. And so thanks for having that.
I also want to thank you for being opening and welcoming. And we may be able to find a time for board members to go out and in a group and get a tour. So thank you for that. All right. Well, without it being on the agenda officially, I think I've gone farther than I should have. So let's move on. All right. We'll move to 10.1. Oh no, budget workshop. Oh, that's the fun one. Carol, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to almost miss you. First review of proposed 2025 budget. Carol and Bill. So he's got you out front though.
I don't have a microphone over there, so I have to come. All right, it's October already. Can you believe it? So you know that the department heads have been working for the last couple of months looking at putting together their estimates of what it's going to cost to provide services during 2025. So for tonight's discussion, I have provided you with kind of our first version of the general fund and the special funds, because some of those special funds do impact the tax levy. So I wanted to just put in front of you at least kind of where we're at now that we've gathered all the department head requests and put them all together in one place. We have compared them against the limits that we have set from the state. So we had to do a little, Bill had to do a little rearranging to get them to all fit, but we do have what is in front of you right now is a workable solution that does fit within our limits. So the memo that went out just kind of goes through and highlights some of the changes. We also have, I believe I included it in your packet, the kind of nice little list that shows here's where we were last year. Here are the things we've included in this request that is different from last year, and then kind of gives you bottom line. So we'll just go through the memo, I guess, and kind of point out some of the highlights. As Bill had mentioned earlier, our net new construction is at 5.1%. That is helpful because that gives us a little more room to grow when they factor in the expenditure restraint limits. So our total growth has been set at 5.2% between our net new construction and our inflation percentage that they've provided us. We can go up 5.2% in our spending. The levy limits are not, we never reach our levy limits, so those aren't a concern. So we just have to focus on the expenditure restraint piece of the puzzle. General fund revenues, we do anticipate getting some additional money in 2025 to cover one of our police officers, because we did backfill one of the positions that had been out on military leave. So we are going to be getting some extra revenue in there to help cover the cost of filling that position. We did relocate some of our recreational programs. We've been running into some issues because those programs have been so successful and have been growing so much that increases costs are surrounded by those programs. But because we have revenue to cover them, we do have the opportunity, we can move those into a special revenue fund. So we do already have a fund, Fund 230, that we do have some programs, the athletic complex programs are already in that fund. So by shifting some of those things out and putting them together with the athletic complex, we have the opportunity to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room within the spending side of things. So we move the revenues to go with it, but then also move some costs at the same time. We have seen some great returns on our interest income. So we did bump up our expected returns for next year. We do have several CDs already set up at the bank that we know will be maturing in 2025. So we're confident that we will be bringing in some strong interest revenue again in 2025 that may eventually have to come back down again. But for now, I know that I'm confident we can hit those numbers for 2025. And then basically just some other random things that have also contributed an additional 20,000. So then moving into the expenditure side, we obviously have already approved a union contract that's going to provide 3.5% increase to the police officers. And we followed suit for 2025, similar to what we did for 24, and we just pushed that 3.5% across the board. There are also certain positions that we feel have been lagging and need to get caught up. I know the library has come in and talked a lot about that every year. So Public Works was the other one that kind of caught our attention this year and felt we needed to do some additional increases to make sure we're keeping those positions competitive. We have our health insurance coming in 8% higher than last year. And then of course, as wages go up, all other benefits, there's a lot of benefits that are tied to the wages. So as those go up, the benefits also go up. Operating changes. We do not have our insurance numbers as of yet, but we have baked into this estimate a 10% increase. So we're hoping that's going to be sufficient. we had some costs in the 2024 budget for our village board retreat that didn't end up being as fancy as I guess we originally planned. And so because I think we're doing it a little bit more on a, partial day basis and not necessarily off location, we feel we can get by doing that for a little less. So we were able to reduce some costs there. Technology is continuing to increase, partly just the cost of the services, but also I think we as a village are trying to be more, use technology better and try to use it more effectively. So there are increases there. The fireworks, so obviously we used to contribute to the Chamber of Commerce to pay for those fireworks. But since the chamber is no longer handling that, it's no longer a general fund expense. We now have that cost over in Fund 230 because it's going to be part of the event. So that was able to shift out of the general fund. I don't believe are going to have any tax settlement issues with Walgreens anymore. So we were able to take that 40,000 out of the budget. That was helpful. And then you can see there, garbage collection, that cost goes up every year. We have some one-time costs for the public works that they've requested. And as I mentioned, we relocated some program costs for the rec programs. And then fire department, fire and EMS have obviously asked for some significant increases. So we'll probably touch on that in a minute. We'll just kind of skip over that for the time being and come back to that one. Economic development was able to reduce their request because they don't have any major redevelopment projects for 2025 planned. So we were able to save some there. As far as the special revenue funds are concerned, not any major changes. We typically take $15,000 to put into the future benefits fund and just try to keep that well funded to support future retirements and costs that may come up as people are retiring. The community center came in with a modest increase that was expected. Promotions and events, in 2024, we had asked for an additional $30,000 to go towards helping cover the cost of that new event coordinator position. But now that the village will be responsible for the events, we hope that the costs or the revenue coming in from those events will in fact cover that position. So we were able to decrease the request to that special fund by $30,000. And then one of the things we do hope to do, that equipment replacement program, we kind of talked about specifically taking taxes to help put into Fund 400 so that we could buy equipment that doesn't last 10 years instead of borrowing for it and being, continuing to have to pay for something after we no longer even have it. So one of the things we do need to keep in mind is we have to keep increasing the amount that we're putting into that until we get to that point where we are actually collecting what we need to pay for the equipment we buy that year. So we started out last year at 90,000, but we certainly bought equipment that was worth more than 90,000. So we're trying to increase that a little bit, but then again, we still have to stay within our limits. So we'll just kind of keep tweaking that number and using that as kind of our plug until we get to a point where we feel confident that we're collecting what we need to cover those costs and avoid having to borrow for those pieces of equipment. And then Capital Fund 400, we have already gone through all the items that were in that list. So I listed them again here, but I don't feel the need to go through them again. And then debt service always has a little bit of an impact, but it's minor for this year. So that's really the primary things that are changing. What we're looking for from all of you at this point is just to see if we're on the right track and if you have any recommendations or, suggestions for the direction we should go from here. I will be sending out a more complete budget report that will have the TIF districts and the utilities in them so that when we meet with you one-on-one this week, we will have a full budget. But we felt this was the piece of the puzzle we wanted to get in front of you first and foremost. On the second page of that PDF that you received is that summary. And it does show that for an average homeowner, the taxes will go up about 3% based on everything that we currently have in this draft of the budget.
A lot of information. Do you want to go back to the fire department piece now?
Yes, so we can do that. Maybe those of you who sit on the fire department board will have more information to share or would, I guess, be able to explain it better, but their request has gone up. In this version, it says 260,000, but I have received an updated version that is now asking for an additional 293,000. That is primarily based on the fact that they are struggling to collect from the customers as they bill directly to the customers. That part of it seems to be a challenge for them. So they had increased fees, they'd increased what they were going to bill out for each haul and thought that that would increase the revenue, but it doesn't seem to be having the effect that they wanted it to because we just have trouble getting it collected.
And part of that is there's been major issues. You want to come forward, chief? Do it anyway. The fire department has had issues with its billing company. So in part, they built a budget based on anticipated revenue that should have been a reality. But over the course of the last year and a half, there have been continued issues with how the billing company not only sent out invoices and received therefore income. We started to see a decline in non-insurance claims getting paid by individuals. Is that accurate, Steve?
First of all, I'd like to go on note that Bill didn't inform me of this meeting till after lunch. So I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. That's a small portion, correct, of what's going on. The discussions that we've had at the fire board, and I know that have come in front of this board over the last 5 years to say, we're no longer a community of volunteers. We're having to pay staff. So not only has billing not returned, some of which is through the billing companies, some of it is through federal programs and state programs where we're not able to collect those monies. There's also just an increase in staffing expense and labor and sheer call volume. When we speak of all the issues that are coming with growth and with the school district, and we're having the same problems. We really are. So yeah, collections is a small part, but it is a part. Those that are underinsured or not insured are paying at a rate. We're getting about a 5% return on them, which means we're not getting anything back. Medicare, I believe, is 39% return. Medicaid's 25%. Private insurers are at 89%. So depending on who we're bringing in, the return rates are different. So when we have the conversations about senior housing, and those all have a trickle down effect to us. And unfortunately, I think we're kind of where the buck stops. We can't trickle it down to anybody else outside of the budget. So.
And that's real. The fire department and EMS department get calls if someone falls at an assisted living facility and they are understaffed with LPN or RNs or aides, and the aides are told not to pick them up. So they call the fire department. Well, we have to send out a fully outfitted ambulance to go and pick that person up and then determine if they're going to be transported or not transported. No one seems to want to pay for those services, but it's frequent. I'm not talking about a once in a while thing. It's a frequent event. So that is a problem. Senior housing is needed and necessary. Assisted living is needed and necessary, but it has a impact on our EMS services. And so as we're planning and developing, we have to think about that. I've asked for a variety of things that I've been told I can't have, like a blood oath from the facility that says they're gonna pay the bill. But we have to figure this out as a fire district and as Windsor and DeForest. And Steve is right, we're no longer volunteer. It used to be businesses provided volunteers, and when the whistle went off, they all left their jobs and they came and got on an ambulance or a fire truck. That's not the way the world works. In addition, people are required to get extensive training to come out and whether it's attending an accident or picking someone up or, you know, going to a home for a heart attack or whatever it is, we are blessed in this community with what the fire department can do. I am on the board, Clean's on the board, and I am amazed at some of the work that these teams do. However, we got to pay for it. And that's what Steve is struggling with these budgets. And the fire district's working on all kinds of strategies, and we're meeting as jointly as communities and planning together and trying to figure it out. But it has resulted in additional budget request.
Yeah, as we were funding the department, we were 50-50 of the tax versus revenue generation. And I mean, that's how we funded a volunteer department. And as the costs have come, you've seen it's really not realistic. And I'd like to give Carol some credit. I pick on her all the time, but she's been helpful.
Yeah.
Her verbal and-
That's on the record. We have Rebecca and then you.
Mark your calendar.
Yes.
Rebecca.
Thanks. I had an extensive conversation with Bill earlier today about the whole thing going on, and it's really concerning for you guys. And we don't have a solution yet, obviously, but one of the things going back kind of to the overall budget was excluding the increase here, the budget itself came in really well and came in where I was hoping it would. But this with the issue with how to get you guys funded properly is just, I mean, we have to have our fire and EMS, and this is something that's going on all over the state and the different communities. It's not just our community. And I don't know. And he wasn't quite able to answer this question. Maybe you can. As far as what the state is able, do they have any kind of funds for things that you can access for these uninsured people that never pay? Okay.
I wish I had a better answer, but we've done a lot of research. This was a problem last year. It was a problem the year before. And this is just the last year we could absorb the expense within the department. But we've done a lot of research. I've got laughed at a few times at the state asking questions. Hey, can I build a hospital? Can I build the care facilities? And all of them are very hard nosed. I know there's a state program where they're working to help get better returns, but the state is understaffed at DHS, and it's been on 5 years. You know, they're just talk. You go to the federal level and it's the same thing, because one's a federal program, one's a state program, neither of which are really moving forward. I think the problem runs that it gets out of my level and has to be handled at this level, at the representative levels. These need to get on agendas in front of the right people. And I'm not necessarily the guy to do that.
So just one follow-up. So as far as, I mean, this obviously is our portion of an overall budget for you guys. I don't know what kind of response you've been getting from Windsor, and is Windsor the only other entity? Okay, so have you been getting
I've been working.
pushback from them?
Well, I got pushback from everybody.
Well, yeah.
I've been working with Windsor. Yeah, I think, I'm not going to speak for either community, but I think we're close enough that we should be able to get something put together.
Bob Whipperforth and I have been talking about this on a very regular basis, and I think their attitude is that we need to resolve this and we need to make it work, and a joint department makes a lot of sense. The only other thing I want to add, and then I'll move to Bill, is that the cost of everything has gone up. I mean, the cost and the length of time to get a fire truck now is over $1 million.
Yeah, fire truck's looking about $1 million off the shelf, which to you guys is like, oh, but off the shelf is really
fair.
It might flow some water and it's got some wheels and a thing, but it's, an ambulance is about 400,000. Our union raises are below village staff. We're at 2.5%. We're not asking for more people in this budget. Like, we've tried everything we can come up with to stay cheap, I guess, for lack of a better word. We're just at the bottom. Can't sustain any longer.
And Steve has done a remarkable job managing that department. I just want to go on record. I've been very pleased. Bill Chang and then Colleen.
Yeah, so just a couple of comments, in response to Rebecca's comment here. So yeah, without a doubt, the request from the fire and EMS department is significant. It accounts for about, if you look at, if you take for consideration the 290 number, it's about 2/3, almost 2/3 of the increased costs impacting the expenditure restraint program. We've been fortunate that we've been able to move some items around to make it fit. We've been fortunate that, we're not rubbing up against the levy limit. There are other communities that are less fortunate that are having to go to referendum for these exact issues and are not able to, whether it's provided the basic services that a community needs or going away from a department altogether. So, saying that, we've recognized coming into the budgeting process that there was going to be this large impact, and I think without a doubt that every department really sharpened their pen and dug down to what is absolutely needed, and that's the budget that we have presented to you this evening. I know it's at a 3% increase over last year of the medium average home. So I believe that the staff's put forth a great budget. We can definitely talk about the impacts to the average home price and what those taxes mean. We can move a little bit on, what goes into the equipment replacement plan, but then you're kind of taking from Peter to satisfy Paul, because we still have those expenses, equipment replacement that, we're now borrowing for on a 10-year note or 10-year bond for equipment that lasts, 6 to 7 years, some even shorter than that. And so what we really want to do is be paying that up front, and calculating the depreciation of that. But like I said, I think I give props to all the departments. We understand that this is coming, but we also need then to understand, once there is this large increase to the fire budget, we can't go down because, we risk then the municipal aid that's now tied into police, fire, public works. And is one of the grading criterias. And so moving forward, kind of understanding what, this is a short-term solution, what the long-term solution is. And, that this board and the Windsor board needs to start treating the fire and EMS department as a budgeted, fully budgeted department. We can look at, how much we spend per department. I think we have graphs here on the screen. On where the village expenditures are. And, as you can see, fire and EMS district is at 10%. Obviously, it's a split district, so it's, depending on where the policy decisions are to make that spend out of taxpayer dollars. That's all.
Thank you. Colleen and then Bill Landgraf.
I think that we do definitely need to make fire and EMS part of the funded village government program. I also, didn't you tell me once it costs $1,000 just to shoot that ambulance out the door?
Yeah, roughly. I think we're at something like $106, $160 a minute to operate. Just all budget, all in. There's so much more than we do outside of,
Right.
we have developers in the room, so every project they bring in, we have to dictate a certain amount of time of Chief Knapp's time to approve plans, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, all in, we're an expensive operation with not a whole lot of revenue generation.
That's the problem. You have no real good way to generate revenue, but you're absolutely essential to life in the community. And I think we're very lucky being the population we are, which is not overly huge, to have a paramedic level service.
Absolutely.
I was unlucky enough a few years back to take advantage of the services here, having a heart attack. And boy, I'll tell you, it's nice to know those guys are here with their drips and their defibrillators and sending strips to the hospital. Totally valuable, absolutely. I support what you're asking for. That's all I have to say, is I have great respect for fire and EMS and public safety, obviously. And Carol tells me that we have taken advantage of every way we can with expenditure restraint. So we didn't leave any money on the table. In the last 2 years, we held our increases to 2 or 2.5%. So 3 is pretty much what I expected. I live in town too. I'm one of those old people on fixed income. And I know my taxes are going up. But I don't know what else we can do. We're growing, we need to provide services. End of speech.
Thank you. Bill and then Tishidra.
I think Bill might have answered my question. Is this a reoccurring expense? Is this going to be $293 next year too?
That's correct. Yeah, once it's in the budget.
So they're in a hole now.
So currently.
Will this get them back to level?
Yeah, so, and Chief can explain this more than I can, but what the $293,000 does is it fills the revenue hole that they have.
Right.
Now, there's ongoing debate and discussion about if the fire department does collect those revenues, those accounts payable, what happens with that? Currently, they're burning through their fund balance this year. And so that's, having to replenish that fund balance will be an issue going forward. But as I understand it, the 293, the budget that they've proposed is pretty conservative in that there was a minimum amount of revenue to be received from fees.
So what's the current rate per year of? Did we get to 600,000 just this year, or did it occur over 5 years, 10 years, or?
You mean, has our revenue generation gone up?
Oh, how did we get to 600,000 in the hole? Or is it,
I see what you're saying.
did it just occur last year? Or did it take 5 years? You know, gradual,
It was a sudden stop, beginning of 22, I believe. So we were on the uptick, revenue was good,
right?
and then it stopped. And when the budget was put together for this current year, the hope was that we would hit our revenue generation, and we fell short. So depleting our reserves, we can't take another. We worked with a new billing company. They projected our revenue out, and it is significantly less than.
That's what I was wondering at what time, because I don't remember it being an issue before. Okay, that's fine. What's kind of concerning to me is somebody calls up at 11 o'clock at night from a nursing facility. They only have LPNs where they're supposed to have qualified people, and we're more qualified in the ambulance than what's at the facility. And of course, they're gonna have us transport. What's concerning is we can't bill that facility. It's a business. And that's where the shame is, that we can't do that. It's not like they are residents per se, but it's a business.
Yeah, there's
And it's no way of
no way,
is that a
no
state
way,
law, or federal law?
not by me.
No, is that a state law, federal law? We can't bill a facility and hold
It's a
them
state law,
responsible?
and then I believe it's best billing practices of. It's a matter of who the power of attorney is. I mean, it's real muddy water.
Right,
So when
right. It's a
a
business.
person goes into a facility, they can designate a power of attorney. The power of attorney could live in another state.
Mhm.
The staff will call and say, he fell, he's not acting normal, what do you want us to do? The power of attorney 3 states away goes, call the ambulance. And that then is an emergency 911 call, and we load and we go. That there's no question, no doubt.
Oh,
They call, we have to go.
I understand that now. Yeah, power of attorney.
Yeah.
It's
That's what
not
a
like
lot of
me
those-
calling up.
Right.
It's different. Yeah, it's all legal.
When it's somebody that doesn't have a power of attorney, or they're at that end of life where they need a little direction on which way to go, then there's ways we can help them reduce the impact on us, but also get them the care they need. But that's when they're not in a
It's
facility.
just a shame we can't collect from a business. But that's the way it is. All right, thanks.
Is Shidra?
Yeah, before I get to the chief, I just want to address Bill. Bill, when you're talking about a facility, it really doesn't matter if there's an LPN. If they got a nurse on call, they can have a CNA or an LPN. That really doesn't matter. The way the chief answered it is totally correct legally. It's all based on what's set up by the family and what's legally in place. So it really doesn't matter the level of licensure of the staff that they have in place. That really has no bearing on who calls and who goes and who doesn't go. It's all based on what's legally set in place when that person's admitted to the facility. But on to the chief. The billing that you have in place, are you guys happy with the way that they're set up and how they're billing and how you guys are receiving payment? Or are you guys looking for a new billing company? I guess I have a couple questions, but that was the first one that I said, or that the first question that I had was, were their projections off, or are you guys just having problems collecting?
Well,
All of the above.
there are
Okay.
3 billing companies that we've been through in 2 years. So the current one we have has been very receptive, and they're nationally recognized. And I think is probably the long-term choice, what's best for us. But they've been only in charge since June 1st. So we're
Okay.
still working, kind of getting them going. We
Okay.
do have collections now as well. And there's 174,000, no, I'm sorry, 123,000 as of this morning out into collections, out of the
Okay.
billing system, one-on-one, we're looking for our money.
Right. And I do echo and support what Colleen said, because this just seems like it's gonna be a cyclical, dog chasing its tail situation, just with the way healthcare is going and the way Medicare and Medicaid is going and just the way insurance is going in that realm. And so I think fire and EMS, you guys offer so many services that really can't generate revenue, but yet need so much that I really think this is an entity that needs different kind of billing and different kind of support. And I think we do need to get ahead of it, especially with how we're growing and developing so fast and so quick. And we need to make sure that at the end of the day, our community is supported in that way. So I support whatever we need to do for fire EMS to make sure that you guys get the support you need so that our residents are always taken care of.
Thank you, Tashidra. Jim?
Yeah, I'd say, please excuse me for being naive, but I'm curious how this works. So like, I got a couple of, for instances that came up, say with my own medical building lately, where I am like disputing something, but when I talk to the people that I'm disagreeing with, there's services that was provided, so regardless if I accepted them or not, they were provided, so I have to pay. So for me, that seems like it's a similar thing. It's like, well, how can you say that you don't want to pay for the EMTs coming to pick you up when it is a service provided? And then, so along with that, my next thought is, well, if they have to pay, maybe they don't have the money now. But I look at it, and this is the part that I don't understand, is can you say like put a lien on somebody? I know you can put like liens on property, but can you put it on an individual if they don't have property? Is that sort of the issue that we're running into? That there's just a point where you never collect, so you just write it off? Or is it something that's can you put it on that person and say it'll be paid off at death, or it will be paid off when they want to refinance their house or something like that?
Well, we get into a little bit of a gray area because my job, as I see it, is somebody calls for help, I provide them help. Billing is down the line. I realize in my personal position, I have to worry about that, but that's not something the fire department as a whole, we don't put liens on property. They can do payment plans, and I think they're as low as $50 a month through the billing company. If you're disputing a bill, that depends. If like your neighbor called because you fell down the driveway or whatever, and you were fine, but they were worried, we can usually, those bills kind of just go off to the side if the patient's refusing care. But it's hard pressed for somebody to dispute a bill if we pick them up and they're unconscious or a drug overdose or in a car accident. Those aren't really disputable bills. So, if that answers your question.
I think it answers half of it, but say like maybe the drug overdose situation, you've now transported them and maybe they don't have money, or maybe they do, but they're just, say they don't have the funds. Can you put a lien on the individual, or all you can do is does your billing company just repetitively call them to be annoying, and that's about all we can do?
Well, the billing company does that, and then when it moves, after a year and it moves into collections, which is another party, then they usually take tax returns if that person has it. That's the extent of like taking something from somebody that we do. Otherwise, yeah, it just gets written off.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is there was an opportunity to collect. It's just gonna take a long time.
It could take up to 2 years to get an ambulance bill if somebody disputed it. It could take easily 2 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Becca?
To answer your question, you can't put a lien on a person, but you can get a judgment against them. So in that respect, yes. It's not really a lien, but yeah, as far, depending on the type of judgment, it can be a judgment against your taxes and stuff like that, but it's a little bit different. One of the things I've been wondering is, obviously, we're also dealing with some jurisdictional issues. If you got a POA in another state, it's kind of hard to put a lien on them in another state on their property. And whose property is it? They're just acting on behalf of the resident who is technically the one who is responsible for the bill, but they're not capable of doing that. So I mean, it's very, very, like you were saying earlier, it's very muddy, it's very difficult, but there are ways to put liens on estates and stuff like that, or get judgments against estates. But all that aside, as far as I'm glad to Cedra ask this question, because I had meant to ask it earlier, was about the billing company. It sounds like maybe you've gone through several and maybe we're at a point where we're with a company that might be knowledgeable about what they're doing.
I really hope so.
Okay, because
Have the energy for another one.
yeah, because I know when I was talking with Bill earlier today, it sounded like coatings were a problem. And it's like, that should be, I mean, if you got someone who is competent, they should understand how to put the coating in for these different. So, yeah, should is the operative word, I know. But as far, he was indicating that if something happens, it's not coded properly, it's your fault, and you finally get to that 180 days, Medicare says, screw you. They don't have to pay it now.
Yep, but basically.
Okay, so that's a real issue. I mean, we've got to make sure that the stuff is being coded properly so that they're not being disputed and denied out of hand.
Yeah, there's a process within the billing company, part of their job. Process to shoot through and reapply. But the more times we have to go through that process, the least likely we are to get paid. And we've cleaned up internally, like our charting, our patient charting. We've done everything on our end we can. So it's just a matter of finding the right company, be sure they're working on our behalf.
And
current company doesn't get paid until we get paid. So.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I guess my other question would be, is there any recourse? Do these billing companies, especially if it's their fault, is there any recourse you have? Do they have any insurance to help reimburse you for your loss? Kind of like malpractice, but not.
The fire,
That might not be a question for me.
Okay.
That's probably
Above your head.
the fire district board.
Oh, okay.
And there is a task force with Bob and I and the administrative people in both communities. We're looking at a variety of those issues right now. So stay tuned. We're aware of a lot of what's going on, and we're trying to come up with some creative solutions together.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the image the fire department wants to put out is you call, we're coming. Whether you can pay or not, this service needs to be out there for people. I would have a hard time putting liens on homes and those types of things and still keeping that community buy-in of, I need help, I can call the fire department and get it. That is the image. That's the number one priority. That is what drove the big budget ask of, you know, I mean, I could bill somebody 10 grand for an ambulance call, but is that truly in the spirit of the service I'm supposed to be providing?
Good point. Thank
That's-
you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, I know this is a topic that people can talk about a lot. We have a whole budget in front of us. We appreciate that even though it was late notice, Steve, it was important you were here. So we
It
appreciate.
was review night, right? I'd like to bring that up,
And it's yours this week too.
as long as he goes down first.
All right, with that being said, I think that, Carol, I am very supportive of where we are with the budget overall. I think you've done an amazing job to help us keep it down and still deal with all of the programming and all of the services we need to provide. So that maybe you can, do you need that from all of us tonight? Or do you just want to tell us next step?
It's an opportunity for you to share your thoughts and give us some guidance. Obviously, we start some of the one-on-one budget meetings as early as tomorrow, so you're going to have an opportunity to talk to us directly in those meetings as well. So
Is that me?
We do, we do have, so in addition to those one-on-one meetings, we do have our next meeting, the 17th, where we'll be able to provide more information, especially on the special revenue funds. If you have any questions on those, the tax increment funds, if you have any questions on those, debt service, capital improvement. Utilities. And so at the conclusion of that meeting on the 17th, we'll be asking if the village board is comfortable for us to go to publication and notice for the public hearing in November. So just, you know, the way that the days fall in November and December here, Thanksgiving is late. So we're trying to balance whether or not we want to get a budget approved before Thanksgiving or after, which doesn't give us a lot of time to move around afterwards. And so just keep that in mind as we walk through this process. We do have a meeting on October 29th that we could potentially fit in there if we can't get to, you know, an agreeable budget, a tentatively agreeable budget at the next meeting. So that's kind of how the timeline spells out here. Any direction that you can give to us earlier, the better we'd be off. I understand you just, you know, received a budget, you know, early last week, but again, it's intentionally built so that, you know, we can have this conversation.
Thank you. All right. Well, with that, we will continue. Am I your budget meeting tomorrow? Oh, okay, good. All right. We will then move on the agenda so that we can get folks in the back out of here and on the road. I know they're waiting and we appreciate that. So let us continue. You guys stay with us over here, Bill and Jim. Our next item is 10.1. It's ordinance 2024-020, an ordinance to rezone from the A3 Agricultural Transition District to the M2 General Industrial District parcel as stated, located on Cake Parkway.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Item 10.2, ordinance 2024-021, an ordinance amending section 14.05 of the DeForest Municipal code, excuse me, relating to the issuance of building permits.
Can
And-
someone please clarify just exactly what was changed?
Yep, Bill is up.
That's correct. So I have on the, it was included in your packet, but it's also highlighted in the red line here, the changes to the current ordinance. I think the substance that's in here is the addition of sub C and E. And what essentially this does is, so currently in the ordinance, it requires that the grading of streets, the installation of gravel, curb and gutter shall be there before staff can issue a building permit. The ordinance also requires sanitary sewer and water. However, it provides an exemption for sanitary water and sewer. It does not do so for the street items. I believe that, you know, the intention of this was to have it there in a situation, a normal situation where the developer is installing the road. It guarantees that we get the road before a building permit is issued. As stated in my memo, there will be instances in tax increment District 9 whereby the village is intending to take on the road project. And so what the situation that we're finding ourselves in is that if we are to take on a project, we're having to dedicate funds to that prior to a building permit getting started. So that does put us in a position where we're taking on a little bit of liability in those beginning months to see that building mature or materialize. And so in a situation where we're in control of the permit, in control of the construction, we're in control of the timeline, it really behooves us or makes sense to have at minimum, the street and the building start at the same time. Not only do you save on time of construction, but you actually have a building going up, which is going to provide you the increment to pay off that bonding a lot sooner. And so, again, I think there's pros and cons. I mean, it's been brought up here about, if the building permit is issued and something shall happen with the road construction, and for some reason, the road construction is not completed yet before the building gets done, and they're looking for an occupancy permit. I think we have language in there defending against that and requesting for adequate assurances that either the work be done or there's safe access to the site or there's a contract out there for construction. So we try to kind of thread the needle on here to provide the village a little bit of flexibility to be able to work with a developer or a builder in a situation where the village is in control or is the owner of the road or the owner of the road project. It doesn't apply if the developer is constructing the road. We still want that building permit to not be issued until that road is built at that point. I think I captured that correctly. Correct.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have questions. Al, do you want to add anything in our discussion?
No, I think Bill went through the explanation pretty well. The only thing that I would say is there is another possibility where the building permit could be issued before the road is in, and that is if the village board decides that you've got adequate assurances that the road will be done by the developer before an occupancy permit is issued. That may be as simple as you deciding to say, as long as the agreement is they don't get an occupancy permit until the road is done. You've basically addressed the issue. So there is a second situation where it doesn't involve the village actually doing the road, but the gist of this is really that if we take on the road responsibility, we can't hold up the developer because we didn't get something done that we were supposed to get done.
All right, thank you. You had your hand up.
So, yeah, I understand TID 9, the situation. It would also could apply down at the hockey rink. The road isn't in yet. They could get a building permit with the understanding that the road was in. But do we have the assurance, since we aren't building the road?
So that's a bit different. So Monticello was constructed by a private developer. However, in that situation, the properties around it was all being developed by the same developer. So it's a master development plan.
Right.
In instances of TID 9, you're gonna have roads being constructed where it's not all owned by one owner, right? So we, as part of the strategy in, whether we address financing through tax increment repayment or assessment at different timing and different intervals, we also need to address, when do these projects start and how do we coordinate it with the buildings going up so that we're not, so that we're not digging ourselves a financial hole with no understanding of a building going up at that time. I'll feed you the situation on if, on a situation under the current terms, we would enter into agreement with, for example, the TDC DeForest, whereby they would not be able to start construction under the current provisions until we've constructed that road. Our timeline says that we'll probably have curb and gutter in June, July of 2025. And so
they can start in April, get going.
They would, under the provision, they would be required, under the current provisions, they would be required to wait until at least July of next year. And, at that time, depending on what they're doing during the winter, they're not going to be able to lease that building until, the following year.
Yeah.
And so that does then put at risk the development agreement, the development ever maturing. Say if the situation changes, the market dries up, there's the various, other things out there that we need to consider. And again, it's a way about weighing, the economic development opportunities that we have before us when the market's hot right now. That can change, by 2027, could there be another developer just down the road that's building the same type of building that then sucking up all the, the tenants? And so those are all things worth considering here.
Just so it doesn't, another developer comes in and says, well, you did it for this. It's not apples to apples.
I don't believe it is, unless it's a situation where, the village and staff have, first of all, you committed to building the road to the budget. It's in the tax increment district plan. And it's a situation where the village engineer and public service staff feel that it's a project that we should take on because it benefits the village rather than the developer take it on. And that's important in TID 9 because of the different elevations, the different connection points, how we have the right of way dedicated out there already and the lots split out there already versus if it was one master development.
Okay, thanks.
Jim, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to, I think this is likely a low risk situation, but I wanted to talk through a situation. Because it's happened enough to me on different state projects where you run into unforeseen things in construction. And namely, I'm thinking of bedrock that maybe you didn't know about. So the scenario that I want to talk through could be really anything, but it's like, okay, we go to build the road, we got the plans done and we're saying we're gonna have it done by whatever time. And now we've hit, say, bedrock and we want to change the elevations of the sanitary, or maybe we need to take on extra cost or extra time and we won't be able to get our project done in time. Or again, maybe with bedrock, it might be, we want to lift the sanitary sewer up. And now we're affecting the site plan that's been approved. I think we could be taking on liability. Again, I don't think this will happen, but also knowing that Vienna has, or that area has a lot of bedrock too, it is a potential risk. And how do we mitigate that?
I'm not sure I know exactly what your question is, but let me address the topic and maybe we'll hit it. In the development agreement, we are not committing to a firm date for completing the road. Okay, so we don't have any contractual obligation to have it done by a certain date. What we're doing is we're basically saying by the time they're ready for occupancy, we should have the road done based on our normal schedule. What this ordinance is basically saying is if something does happen and we can't get our road done in time, we're not going to hold up their occupancy permit because it wasn't their fault that any of this stuff happened. As long as they've got legal access to the property, we aren't going to hold up their occupancy permit. In other situations where the developer is doing the road, the burden then falls on the developer to get that done before the occupancy permit gets issued. So does that?
Yep, I think that's half of it, but what if there's a scenario that we've approved a site plan based on our roadway plans and then we can't build the road to that plan? So they say they have to now modify their site plan. Could we be liable for the modification to their site plan? Is that gonna happen?
I guess I'm not seeing how that would happen. I mean, we're going to build the road according to whatever plans we put together. So that's the road that they're going to get. And if they have to change their site plan to match that road, I don't see how that's the village's problem.
I would say that happens 98% of the time. There's, for instances, when you can't quite build the road that you have planned, but my hope is that would not happen in this location.
So I think one way that we can address that is have some kind of language in the development agreement in regards to the issuance of a building permit subsequent to the road, the village understanding the timeline and of the road. I mean, I would imagine that before we would issue a building permit, we'd want to know what the bedrock looks like, and have that preliminary information in hand before we even, engineer the project, right? So, I think we can work with that. Yeah, I mean, it is a situation that we've considered and discussed with this particular developer about being able to get them started concurrent to the road construction getting started.
Right, Jan had a question.
I don't know that I have a question so much, but I think that my concern was similar to what Jim was talking about. And I had a discussion with Bill earlier today, which kind of helped me resolve that. And now listening to Al, I think that helps too. But you're right, I just kind of had that concern of if we change this and the building, the company that builds the building, they get their occupancy permit, but yet for some reason we weren't able to complete the road on time. Could we be held liable, and would that bring up legal issues? Because we don't want to be involved in lawsuits. But I think you said that it can be worded so that that would not be the case.
So
we would be going forward. with other developments. I get the TID 9 and that all sounds fine. And this particular instance, why we're looking at this now. But going forward, we're really going to be making decisions on individual cases anyways, which also would come into play. And I think there'd be some safety there. I think would be okay.
This exception only applies when you contracted with somebody that says you will do the work. So if you, in TID 9, for example, with the TDC DeForest project, if we contract with them and commit to doing the road, then this exception applies. So if you're not comfortable at any point in time that the road can be done the way you want the road to be done or expect it to be done, don't enter into that contract. And then this exception will never come into play, because people can't just build roads without you letting them build the roads. And you're not going to build a road until you're ready to build the road. So, there are some guardrails built into this to make sure that, if you decide that you're not willing to enter into the contract until you've done soil borings or whatever you need to do to satisfy yourself that the road's not going to be moved, you have the ability to do that under the ordinance.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second on the floor. And I would ask all those in favor to signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, 10.3, ordinance 2024-022, an ordinance amending section 16.02 of the DeForest Municipal Code relating to scheduling fees for sanctioned recreational programs. Reese?
Hello. So I have in the memo, one of the things that we've been talking about at the public service group is just how we are kind of taking a holistic look and review of our different fees. And I believe it was last month, the beginning of the month, we brought forward the change to the scheduling preference. And so one of the things that we're looking to do is to increase the practice fee for the sanctioned organizations for next year as we continue to kind of take a deeper dive into the financial impact that the sanctioned organizations have on their facility usage. It was just kind of one of those, but we want to make sure that when we do it right. And we feel like, even with a team paying $50 per season, for unlimited, well, not unlimited practices anymore, but for practices is still a significantly good deal. So we're recommending this change to the ordinance, and then with us taking a deeper look in 2025 at the definition as a whole.
Motion to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second, but I have a question.
All right, go with your question.
So Reese, if I'm understanding this correctly, you don't want to necessarily futz with the fees themselves, but you want to see how things go as far as, I'm trying to get a handle on exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to see if the fees would affect the usage. Is that correct?
So we want to keep the definition is staying the same. The fee is doubling per team.
Right, I'm sorry, yeah.
And that is to help recoup some of our costs. We know that with $25 we're not recouping our costs. With $50 we're not recouping our cost. But also, these are taxpayers, majority of these groups. So we want to recoup a little bit more of that cost without making a huge impact on the user groups, going into next year, and then really paint a much larger picture of what their usage costs and start working with those groups to see, if they might be able to identify other areas.
Okay, thank you. My head just wrapped around that. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there are no other questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 11, communications. Your check register was in your packet. Community Commission and Board reports. Again, in your packets. I did the president's report already, so with that, I would entertain a motion to convene into closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second? A
Second.
motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Simpson,
Aye.
trustee Stefan Hagan Han,
Aye.
trustee Witherspoon,
Aye.
trustee Allen,
Aye.
trustee Langrav, trustee Little,
Aye.
President Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We will take a break while they're setting up. Don't be gone long. And then we will. All right. We have come out of closed. Are you ready for us, Bill, to be
Yeah, I
out?
just wanted to check and see if Tisha can hear us.
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I don't know of any other business, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion
the-
to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 9:35 PM.
Good luck with your bro.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good luck with your car.
Thank you for that too. Good
Yeah,
night.
that too.
Yeah, she had a bad day.
She kept smiling. Oh, my.